Chapter 881. At this moment, Yi Xian felt warm in his heart. He didn't reject it and kept the treasures. Yi Xian cupped his fists at Shen Xinghe. "Thank you, old Shen." Old Shen smiled. "We're on the same side. There's no need to be so polite." Yi Xian smiled. "I'll bid farewell to my friends." Shen Xinghe nodded. "Go." Yi Xian walked towards Xueqi and the rest. Shen Xinghe said softly, "I, Fu Wenzong, am very lucky." Lu Yong, who was beside Shen Xinghe, smiled. "Senior brother, aren't you afraid that he will bring disaster to me, Fu Wenzong?" Shen Xinghe said softly, "He wants to get benefits but doesn't want to contribute. How can there be such a good thing in this world?" Lu Yong nodded. "I've secretly investigated him. This person isn't an ungrateful person. If I, Fu Wenzong, treat him well, he will treat me well." As he spoke, he looked at Xueqi and the rest. "I didn't expect these three girls to be so monstrous. This time, I, Fu Wenzong, have really made a killing." Shen Xinghe nodded and smiled. "You've made a killing." As he said this, he seemed to have thought of something. His expression turned serious. "You must be careful of the Worldwide Academy. Remember, let our people secretly protect them." Lu Yong nodded. "Understood." What were geniuses most afraid of? Premature death. One could imagine that many years later, if Yi Xian and the rest didn't die, Fu Wenzong would definitely become a superpower in the fifth dimension. Especially Yi Xian. Yi Xian had the highest chance of drawing the seven-colored talisman. Therefore, Fu Wenzong was most worried about Yi Xian and the rest. In the distance, Yi Xian walked towards Xueqi and the rest. He looked at them and pointed his finger. 3 white jade bottles landed in front of the 3 girls. Spring of life. Lian Wanli grabbed a white jade bottle. She glanced at Yi Xian and said with a smile, "How interesting." Yi Xian smiled and looked at 7. "Are you okay?" Xueqi shook his head. "It's fine." Yi Xian nodded. "Right, where's Emosier?" Xueqi said, "Emosier is about to break through, so we came first." He had to break through. Yi Xian smiled and said, "It's a good thing." 7 looked at Yi Xian. "How is Fu Wenzong?" Yi Xian nodded. "Very good." Xueqi nodded, "Then we'll stay in Fu Wenzong for the time being." Yi Xian said, "The 3 of you can cultivate in Fu Wenzong. Fu Wenzong doesn't have much, but it has money. If you need anything, you can look for old Shen. With his help, I believe your strength will increase greatly." The 3 of them weren't weaker than him in terms of talent. What they lacked was resources. Once they had resources, the 3 of them would definitely soar. Lian Wanli suddenly asked, "Where are you going?" Yi Xian smiled, "I'm going to walk around and look for opportunities." Lian Wanli looked at Yi Xian. "I'll go with you." Yi Xian was stunned. Lian Wanli's brows raised. "No?" Yi Xian hesitated and was about to speak when Lian Wanli said, "Are you afraid that I'll drag you down?" Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. "Of course not." Lian Wanli said calmly, "Then why are you hesitating? Are you afraid that I will eat you?" Yi Xian smiled. "If you want to go, then let's go together." Lian Wanli nodded. She seemed to have thought of something and looked at Enlancio. "You don't mind, right?" Enlancio shook her head. Lian Wanli smiled. "Don't worry, I won't eat him." Enlancio said softly, "Be careful." A moment later, Yi Xian and Lian Wanli left. 7 and Enlancio followed Shen Xinghe and the others back to Fu Wenzong. Fu Wenzong placed a lot of importance on 7 and Enlancio because their combat strength was too high. Although they didn't know Talisman Dao, they knew how to fight. What Fu Wenzong lacked the most now was people who could fight. Thus, Fu Wenzong was very happy about 7 and Enlancio's arrival. Somewhere in the clouds, Yi Xian rode on his sword and beside him was Lian Wanli. Actually, he didn't understand why Lian Wanli followed him. He knew that she definitely wasn't here to play. At this moment, Lian Wanli suddenly said, "Do you still remember Qingzhou?" "Qingzhou." Yi Xian nodded. "I remember." How could he not remember that place? He and his sister Yi Ling came from that place. Of course, the place that left the deepest impression was Qingqing, country of Jiang. Old Ji. Yi Xian looked at Lian Wanli. "Why are you suddenly asking this?" Lian Wanli smiled. Because we haven't gone back for a long time. Go back. Yi Xian was silent. Lian Wanli tilted his head and looked at Yi Xian. Have you thought about going back? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. Over there. There's still someone I miss. Lian Wanli said softly. Her. Yi Xian nodded. Lian Wanli smiled. I thought you forgot about her. Yi Xian shook his head. No. Lian Wanli nodded. When are you going back? Yi Xian looked at Lian Wanli. You really want to go back? Lian Wanli nodded. The further I am from home, the more I miss it. Home. Yi Xian shook his head. To him, that place was no longer home. Because Yi Ling was no longer in Qingqing. Moreover, An Lanxiu, Lian Wanli, and the others were all here. So, there was only one person in that place that he was reluctant to part with. Lian Wanli suddenly smiled. No matter what, let's go back after some time, how about it? With our current strength, it won't take long to go back there. Yi Xian thought about it, then nodded. All right. Let's go back together. Lian Wanli's lips curled up. It's settled. Yi Xian nodded. It's settled. Saying that, he looked at Lian Wanli. You followed me out to talk about this? Lian Wanli smiled. Not really. I really want to follow you around and see if I can bask in your light and obtain some opportunities. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Lian Wanli asked, Where do you plan to go? Yi Xian said in a low voice. Ruins of a reason. This time, his target was the ruins of the founder of the limitless sword. In the past, the prophet had gone to the ruins, but the prophet's vision was too high, and he only fancied the limitless sword, so he decided to take a look. Perhaps there would be a new harvest. To put it bluntly, it was to pick up scraps. Yi Xian asked in his heart, Miss Lian Qian, how far are we from the ruins? Lian Qian said, Walk in this direction, there's still half a day left. Yi Xian frowned. With my speed, I still need half a day? Lian Qian said, Yes, that place is a bit far, and it's very dangerous. Yi Xian was puzzled. Dangerous? What do you mean? Lian Qian said, You'll know when the time comes. Yi Xian nodded. No matter what, I have to go and take a look. Saying this, he seemed to have thought of something and asked, Miss Lian Qian, from the looks of it, the strength of this Myriad Dimension Academy is quite strong. Lian Qian sneered. Ignorant. Yi Xian was speechless. Lian Qian said in a low voice, Let me tell you, don't ever look down on the Myriad Dimension Academy. Yi Xian said, What do you mean? Lian Qian said, Let me tell you about the Worldwide Academy. After Master disappeared, the strongest person in the Worldwide Academy should be that female teacher. If she wants to kill you, let me tell you, unless that plainly dressed woman comes, no one can protect you. Even if Fu Wenzong gathers the strength of the entire academy, he won't be able to stop her. Yi Xian said in a low voice, That female teacher is that strong? Lian Qian said, Very strong. Back then, she was already unfathomable. Now, she must be even stronger. Apart from her, the academy has 6 headmasters. These 6 were the strongest people in the academy, excluding the female teacher. Back then, the 6 of them were already at the peak of the heavenly fate realm. Now, with their talent and strength, they should have reached the Karma realm. However, I don't know if these 6 people are still in the academy. Speaking up to this point, she paused and then continued, Also, the Worldwide Academy has a great formation. It was left behind by the teacher in the past. This formation is called human slaying. The teacher said that there are no gods in the world, only powerful people. If the Worldwide Academy is in danger in the future, it must be the work of humans. Therefore, the teacher personally studied this great formation. Once this formation is activated, it can slay anyone. This is why even though the Worldwide Academy has declined, no one dares to enter the Myriad Dimension Library. Because in this world, it is possible that no one can block this slash. Yi Xian suddenly said, What about the plainly dressed woman? Boom. A powerful force suddenly blasted Yi Xian's body. Yi Xian was directly sent flying. Lian Wanli, who was standing at the side, blinked her eyes in a daze. In the distance, Yi Xian said with some grievance, Miss Lian Qian, what are you doing? The one who attacked just now was naturally Lian Qian. Lian Qian said coldly, How can you be so stubborn? Yi Xian was speechless. Lian Qian said softly, I'm not joking with you. You must not underestimate the Myriad Dimension Academy. Besides the female teacher and the 6 great sect seniors that I told you about earlier, the Myriad Dimension Academy still has many formidable methods. Especially those powerful students and teachers. Most of them left the academy after the master disappeared. However, if the worldwide academy is in danger, I can guarantee that these people will definitely appear. Including that female teacher. Yi Xian was slightly puzzled. Why? Lian Qian said, because this is the academy left behind by the master. It can decline, it can destroy itself, but it cannot be destroyed by outsiders. Yi Xian was silent. Lian Qian said again, even I don't want the Myriad Dimension Academy to be destroyed. If you have the ability in the future, just kill that Chen Tian and the other leaders. Yi Xian smiled. Miss Lian Qian, it's them who want to destroy me. After a moment of silence, Lian Qian said softly, since you obtained this pagoda, you can also be considered as the master's successor. Therefore, I hope that you can protect the academy he left behind. Of course I won't force you. Yi Xian smiled. Let's not talk about this troublesome issue. Lian Qian said, all right, we'll talk about the future in the future. Yi Xian started to speed up. Meanwhile, in the faraway Myriad Dimension Academy, Chen Tian was sitting in the study. He had been sitting here for a full 4 hours. At this time, an old man suddenly walked into the study. Chen Tian looked at the old man. How is it? The old man said in a deep voice. He is willing to personally kill Yi Xian. However, he said that this is not for you, but for the future of the academy. Chen Tian was silent. The old man said again. He has already gone to find that Yi Xian. Since he agreed to personally take action, there shouldn't be any problems. P.S. Sorry, the update is over. There's no reason, no excuse, I overslept. I bow to everyone. Sorry. Chapter 882. After an unknown period of time, Yi Xian and Lian Wanli arrived at a mountain range. Instead of flying, they walked on foot. Deep in the mountains and ancient forests. That was what Yi Xian was feeling at the moment. Around him and Lian Wanli, ancient trees towered into the sky. The top of their heads was covered by countless leaves, preventing even the slightest bit of sunlight from entering. Around them, weeds were several zhang tall and densely packed, bringing with them a heavy sense of oppression. Lian Wanli said softly, this place has grown wild for who knows how long. Yi Xian nodded. He glanced around and said softly, be careful. One look and you could tell that this place wasn't a good place. Lian Wanli nodded slightly, and the two continued forward. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, Miss Lian Qian, how much longer do we need? Lian Qian said, 2 hours. Yi Xian's expression froze. He smiled bitterly and said, why don't we just use sword kinesis flight? Lian Qian said softly, respect. Yi Xian was silent. Lian Qian continued, when Master came here, he also advanced on foot to show his respect. Yi Xian said in a low voice, Miss Lian Qian, as far as I know, your master was already invincible in the world, right? Lian Qian said, you can say that. Yi Xian was about to say something, but Lian Qian said, I know what you mean. Master didn't only respect the strong, he respected everyone. He said that every life should be respected. And in Master's opinion, the strong shouldn't be measured by strength alone. Yi Xian asked, then what else should be measured by? Lian Qian said softly, reason. Yi Xian frowned slightly, what do you mean? Lian Qian said, if a strong person is willing to reason with someone weaker than him, then he is a strong person. Yi Xian shook his head. In his impression, there were very few people who talked reason. Everyone talked about their fists, and whoever had the bigger fists was the one who was reasonable. As if she knew what Yi Xian was thinking, Lian Qian continued, that's why Master said that this world is a sick one. People only believed in strength. They only believed in absolute strength, because with strength they could do whatever they wanted. Of course, Master didn't say that this is wrong. He said that this is the rule of this world because the weak will be bullied, and once a person is bullied, they will want to become stronger, and then the whole world will continue this vicious cycle. When she spoke up to hear, she paused for a moment and said, Master said that he wanted to create an equal world, a world that didn't rely on strength. Yi Xian quickly asked,
And then,
Lien Qian said, he left the world for a period of time. During that time, he went to do this. Yi Xian asked again, did you succeed?
Lien Qian said, I don't know. I only know that when he came back, he told us that no matter what kind of world it was impossible to be absolutely fair. He said that he sealed the world's spiritual energy, so there were no world-destroying powerhouses in that world, and the average lifespan was less than 100 years. But even so, there were fights in that world and the fights were very fierce. In the end, he understood one thing, and that is that people will never be satisfied. Not only people, but all living things are the same, they will never be satisfied. Moreover, as a person's strength gradually grows, his ambition will also grow.
Yi Xian was silent.
At this time, Lien Qian suddenly said, are you willing to reason with people who are weaker than you?
Himself? Yi Xian smiled. If people don't bully me, I won't bully them. If people bully me, I will kill them.
Lien Qian said softly, that's enough. Yi Xian said in a low voice, Miss Lien Qian, I think your master might want to change the world.
Lien Qian smiled. He didn't want to, he has already done it. Therefore, he founded the Worldwide Academy. Unfortunately, after he disappeared, the current Worldwide Academy has slowly deteriorated.
Yi Xian nodded and was about to speak, when Lien Wanli suddenly said, look ahead.
Yi Xian looked up.
Not far in front of his door was a row of ancient trees, and this row of ancient trees directly blocked their path.
Yi Xian frowned slightly. Miss Lien Qian, what is this?
Lien Qian said in a low voice, let's go.
Yi Xian nodded.
He pointed with his finger, and a ray of sword light cut through the air. The ancient tree in the distance was directly cut down, and behind the ancient tree, there were weeds everywhere, and behind the weeds, a stone door could be faintly seen.
Yi Xian said softly, have we arrived?
Lien Qian said, we have.
Yi Xian and Lien Wanli walked in front of the stone door, and just as he was about to attack, he seemed to have thought of something. He bowed slightly, and then put his finger together and lightly drew a line.
Chi! The weeds were cut to pieces by the sword light, and behind the weeds was a stone door covered in runes. Yi Xian was about to attack, but at this time, Lien Qian suddenly said, do you want to die?
Yi Xian was a bit puzzled. What do you mean, Miss Lien Qian?
Lien Qian said, this is a seal that I borrowed master's strength in the past.
If you attack forcefully, the rebound force will directly kill you.
Yi Xian smiled awkwardly. Then I'll have to ask Miss Lien Qian to attack.
At this time, Lien Qian suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. She glanced at Yi Xian, then looked at the stone door. She opened her palm, and silently muttered some terms that Yi Xian didn't understand. A moment later, the stone door in the distance suddenly became illusory, and after a dozen breaths, the stone door disappeared.
Lien Qian looked at Yi Xian. Let's go. As soon as she finished speaking, she transformed into a ray of white light and vanished. Yi Xian nodded and walked through the stone door with Lien Qian Li. After passing through the stone door, there was only darkness, and an oppressive feeling assaulted their faces.
Yi Xian opened his palm, and a moonstone flew out.
But at this moment, a ray of sword light suddenly slashed the moonstone. Bang! The moonstone directly exploded. Yi Xian frowned slightly. This is, Lien Qian said, the sword spirit of this place. There was a sword here in the past, the blind swordsman's sword, and the sword spirit has always been guarding this place. Master wanted to take it away, but it was unwilling. You have to be careful, the sword spirit of this sword is extremely powerful, and you can't underestimate it. Yi Xian nodded, and he glanced at the surroundings before walking towards the depths of the cave. At this moment, a ray of sword light suddenly cut through the air in front of him.
Yi Xian blocked it with his sword.
Bang! A powerful force instantly blasted Yi Xian out of the cave, and Lien Qian Li was also blasted out together with him.
Outside the cave, Yi Xian frowned slightly.
Was this sword really that powerful? Without thinking too much, Yi Xian was about to make a move when Lien Qian suddenly appeared in front of the cave. She looked into the cave and asked, do you still remember me? At this moment, the faint sound of a sword humming came from inside the cave. Lien Qian turned to look at Yi Xian. Let's go. After saying that, she led Yi Xian and Lien Qian Li into the cave. The cave was still pitch black, but after walking for about 15 minutes, the three of them heard the gurgling sound of a stream.
Yi Xian looked into the distance.
There was an exit in the distance, and from this exit, he saw a waterfall. After exiting the cave, their field of vision suddenly widened. In front of them was a small waterfall, and below the waterfall was a pool of water. All around them was a sea of flowers. Yi Xian looked at the bottom of the waterfall. On the pool of water, there was a middle-aged man with his eyes covered by a black cloth. The middle-aged man was dressed very simply, in simple cotton clothes. From his appearance, there was nothing special about him, and he looked no different from an ordinary person. At this moment, Yi Xian and Lian Qianli suddenly turned their heads to look. Not far away, from the flowering shrubs on the right, a woman wearing a cotton dress walked out. The woman held a bouquet of flowers in her hand, and her body emitted a domineering aura. Sword spirit. After this woman came out, she looked at Lian Qian and said, "Long time no see." Lian Qian nodded, "Yes, it has been a long time." The woman walked to the side of the pool and placed the bouquet of flowers in her hand into the pool. Then she asked softly, "Where is your master?" Lian Qian shook her head. He disappeared. The woman frowned and looked at Lian Qian. "In this world, no one can kill him." Lian Qian said softly, "He disappeared. But he wasn't killed by anyone. As for where he went, even I don't know. It's like he evaporated into thin air." The woman fell silent for a moment before she said, "He's a very extraordinary person." Lian Qian smiled and said, "Your master is very powerful as well." The woman looked at the middle-aged man in the middle of the pool and said softly, "During Master's era, after Master became famous, he had never tasted defeat. But if you compare him to your master, he's still lacking. Your master is the strongest person I've ever met." Lian Qian shook her head. "He was." The woman turned to look at Lian Qian and asked, "What do you mean?" Lian Qian said softly, "I met a very strong woman in the fourth dimension, so strong that she's unreasonable." The woman frowned slightly. "Stronger than your master?" Lian Qian said in a low voice, "I don't know. I only know that if she fought Master, Master might not be able to defeat her." "Right, she's also a swordsman." "Swordsman." The woman's brows raised slightly when she heard Lian Qian. "She's a swordsman?" Lian Qian nodded. "Yes." The woman looked straight at Lian Qian. "You mean, she's stronger than my master?" Lian Qian glanced at the middle-aged man in the pool not far away. "Your master is the strongest swordsman I've ever met in the fifth dimension, but that woman should be stronger than your master." "Ridiculous." The woman's expression suddenly became cold. "If you say that your master is stronger than my master, I'll admit it. But I don't believe that there's a swordsman in this world who's stronger than my master in the way of the sword. Absolutely impossible." Lian Qian shook her head. "You should go out and take a look." She knew that the master of the sword spirit in front of her was very strong. How could a person who could create the infinite sword not be strong? But that woman was even stronger. That woman was so strong that she was unreasonable. At this time, the woman not far away suddenly said in a cold voice, "In my heart, all the swordsmen in this world added together can't even compare to a single hair on my master's head. At this time, the sound of a sword suddenly rang out from within Yi Xian's body. The next moment, the sword of the plain-dressed woman suddenly flew out. Its speed was extremely fast, and like a sudden clap of thunder, it instantly slashed towards the woman. At this time, the female sword spirit suddenly stood up, her eyes as cold as ice. "Impudent!" As her voice fell, a powerful sword force erupted from her body. Chapter 883. The female sword spirit's face instantly turned as cold as ice when she saw that the sword was targeting her. Powerful sword aura swept out from her body, but as the sword slashed over, her sword aura instantly vanished into thin air. The female sword spirit's expression instantly changed when she witnessed this scene. However, she didn't shrink back. She stomped her right foot on the ground and transformed into a ray of light that shot forward explosively. Under the gazes of Yi Xian's group of three, the two swords slashed against each other. They were evenly matched. Bang! A ray of light flew out. It was the female sword spirit who flew out. After the female sword spirit stopped moving in the distance, her figure instantly became ethereal. That attack had almost destroyed her spirit. Meanwhile, the woman's sword suddenly trembled violently, and a sword howl reverberated through the sky. Yi Xian was able to sense that the sword was looking down upon him. It wasn't just looking down upon the female sword spirit, it was looking down upon everything in the world. It was filled with invincible confidence.
Just like the woman in a plain dress.
Lian Qian took a deep and long glance at the sword that floated in the distance, and there was a trace of fear in her eyes. At this moment, she knew that she'd underestimated the woman in a plain dress. Because the strength of the sword was too heaven-defying. The sword was strong because of its master. The sword was as strong as the woman in a plain dress was. This was the mortal realm. The sword was extraordinary because of its master.
Meanwhile, the woman's sword suddenly transformed into a ray of light that entered Yi Xian's body. Yi Xian gazed at the female sword spirit, and the latter's gaze was slightly dazed. She'd lost. Moreover, she'd lost so easily that she didn't even have the strength to fight back. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Young miss." The sword spirit gazed at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled. "I've always felt that one has to experience failure to grow. If a person continues to be invincible, then that person will never know what he's lacking. So long as he fails once, then that person will notice that he has many flaws and inadequacies. Only those who have experienced failure will become stronger." Failure? He, Yi Xian, was never afraid of failure. What he was afraid of was not having a chance to start over after failure. Therefore, some failures were acceptable, but some failures were absolutely unacceptable. For some failures you could start all over again, but for some failures, you would never have the chance to make a comeback. The sword spirit looked at Yi Xian. "Are you a swordsman?" Yi Xian nodded. Meanwhile, Lian Qian spoke abruptly. "Miss Sword Spirit, I've come this time because I want him to inherit your master's inheritance in the sword Dao." The sword spirit looked at Yi Xian again. After a while, she shook her head. "Too weak." Yi Xian smiled and said, "If I were invincible in this world, why would I need senior's inheritance?" The sword spirit remained silent. Lian Qian looked at Yi Xian. "Attack." Yi Xian understood what Lian Qian meant. He suddenly disappeared. Boundless sword. His understanding of the boundless sword could be said to be extremely deep. Presently, executing the boundless sword was extremely easy for him. Moreover, it was extremely powerful. A trace of surprise flashed in the sword spirit's eyes when she saw the boundless sword. She suddenly moved her right hand horizontally to block, and a sword light flickered in her right hand. Bang! A sword was directly blocked by her right hand. However, Yi Xian had vanished. The sword spirit swept the surroundings with her gaze, and then she suddenly pressed her fingers together and tapped lightly. A strand of sword light flew out from the tip of her finger. Hiss! The sound of something tearing resounded. Space had suddenly split apart over 100 m away, and then Yi Xian walked out from within it. Yi Xian gazed silently at the sword spirit. He realized that his boundless sword was completely useless against this woman. Moreover, she knew where he was. The sword spirit glanced at Yi Xian. "You did very well." Yi Xian nodded. "Thank you." The sword spirit turned around to look at the middle-aged man at the center of the pool. A short moment later she spoke softly. "You aren't the most suitable person in Master's heart. But I know that he won't be able to wait for someone more suitable than you. Come here." Yi Xian walked over to the sword spirit's side, and she spoke softly, "Greet him." Yi Xian bowed respectfully to the middle-aged man. The woman spoke softly. "Since you're Master's successor, then you should know about Master's background and some things. Master's name was Xia Fengqi in the beginning, and he was a prince of Xia. Later on, he was betrayed by his imperial concubine, and his eyes were stabbed blind. His meridians were shattered, and he became a cripple who couldn't cultivate." Yi Xian asked, "Then how did he become a formidable swordsman in the end?" The woman said, "Master was unable to become a normal cultivator, so he created 2 cultivation techniques. A self-created cultivation method." Yi Xian hurriedly asked, "What cultivation techniques?" The woman stood up and said, "Cultivate the heart, cultivate the soul." Cultivate the heart. Cultivate the soul. The woman continued, "The so-called cultivation of the heart is the cultivation of the sword. The heart is the sword and the sword is the thought. It doesn't rely on the body or the soul, and wherever the heart goes, the sword goes." At this point, she slowly closed her eyes. At this moment, a sword suddenly condensed between her brows, and in the next moment, the sword vanished. Yi Xian was stunned. The woman glanced at Yi Xian and didn't speak. Yi Xian was still stunned. Lian Qian suddenly said,
1,000 miles away.
Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression changed abruptly, and he looked into the distance.
At the end of his vision, a sword was floating in the air.
1,000 miles away. At this moment, Yi Xian's expression became extremely solemn.
The woman spoke again. Actually, you haven't brought out the full power of your boundless sword because you lack the core cultivation technique. This boundless sword can only be unleashed to its greatest extent by using the heart sword mental cultivation method.
Yi Xian spoke solemnly. You mean that this boundless sword is a flying sword?
The woman nodded. It is. This boundless sword has another name. 1,000 miles away. It can instantly kill everything within 1,000 miles. 1,000 miles.
Yi Xian fell silent.
This isn't 3 kilometers. It's 1,000 miles.
Meanwhile, the woman spoke again.
Master, besides this boundless sword, there's another sword technique. No, it can't be called a sword technique. It's a form of the sword Tao.
Yi Xian was very curious.
What form? The woman spoke softly. Sword rule.
The so-called sword rule is the heavy sword and the light sword. The light sword focuses on speed, and only speed can't defeat all martial techniques in the world.
So, the form of the light sword has to be fast, so fast that the enemy can't defend against it.
Yi Xian hurriedly asked, what about the heavy sword?
The woman said, the heavy sword focuses on using one's strength to overcome 10 techniques. Under one sword, all techniques can be broken.
As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian. When Master's body recovered, he could freely switch between the light sword and the heavy sword. At that time, no one was his opponent. Heavy sword. Light sword. Yi Xian fell silent.
He had already seen the power of the light sword. This boundless sword, its power naturally went without saying.
If the light sword was so powerful, would the heavy sword be weak? What if the light sword and heavy sword were combined? Wouldn't that be heaven-defying?
At this time, Lian Wanli suddenly asked, isn't there another cultivation method? The woman nodded. Master also created a cultivation method, the soul. The soul doesn't rely on the body, but on the soul. As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian. Master's strongest back then wasn't the light sword or heavy sword, but the light sword, heavy sword, and the soul form.
As she spoke, her right hand suddenly pressed on Yi Xian's shoulder. In the next moment, Yi Xian's soul was directly pulled out by her.
The woman said, try the boundless sword.
Yi Xian hesitated, then asked,
soul?
The woman nodded. Yi Xian nodded.
He opened his palm, and the heaven-punishing sword appeared in his hand.
Although he was a soul form, he could still use sword techniques. Of course, it wasn't that powerful.
Yi Xian swung his sword, and the sky thousands of feet away suddenly split open.
Boundless sword.
Its power was at least half of the original. Yi Xian's soul returned to his body, and he said in a deep voice, Miss Sword Spirit, I feel that my body is a little stronger. Moreover, although the soul can use sword techniques, but besides being slightly faster, it's meaningless. The woman looked at Yi Xian. That's because you haven't seen the power of the soul.
Yi Xian said,
Miss, please demonstrate. The woman glanced at Yi Xian. Do I have a soul?
Yi Xian, the woman said softly, do you know the power and uniqueness of the soul?
Yi Xian bowed slightly. Miss, please show me. The woman said, when the soul leaves the body, although it doesn't have the support of the body, it also doesn't have the shackles of the body. To put it bluntly, there were 3 benefits to having a soul.
First, it was light.
Your soul would be as light as a feather in this world. Under such circumstances, no matter what sword technique you used, even if you didn't have the support of your physical body, you would still be able to become faster. Your boundless sword just now can actually be faster.
Yi Xian said in a deep voice, what's the second benefit?
The woman said, soul power. The soul has the power of the soul, which is also soul power. Your soul power and body are very strong. If you fuse Master's sword rule with this soul power, it will become very powerful. The biggest benefit of the soul is that you can cultivate the power of yin and yang. The soul is yang, and the body is yin. Only the soul can absorb the power of yin and yang, and the power of yin and yang can make your sword stronger. Simply put, even if the world is without spirit energy, it won't affect you because you cultivate the power of yin and yang, and the power of yin and yang is contained in your soul so you can use it with your body.
Yi Xian understood when he heard this.
The soul was a different way of cultivation, a new way of cultivation that left the body, and it was a little similar to his invincible sword body. Even the cultivation methods were different. Meanwhile, the woman said, "Start with the sword rule. I'll teach you the mental cultivation method now. As for how far you can cultivate it, it'll depend on your own ability." As soon as she finished speaking, she pointed with her fingers, and a white light suddenly entered Yi Xian's mind. In next to no time, some information appeared in Yi Xian's mind. Heart-sword mental cultivation method and sword-soul mental cultivation method. As if he had obtained a treasure, Yi Xian started to absorb it crazily. In the following time, Yi Xian started to cultivate the sword rule. He started with the light sword, which was the immeasurable sword. Flying sword. After adding the heart-sword mental cultivation method, Yi Xian realized that the speed of the immeasurable sword was at least a few times faster than before. The real flying sword could take a person's head from 1,000 miles away. In a courtyard somewhere in the Worldwide Academy, a middle-aged man suddenly stood up. He was the strategist who had gone to the four-dimensional universe. And he was in charge of looking for Yi Ling. The strategist looked at the old man who suddenly appeared in front of him. "Still no news about Yi Ling?" The old man shook his head. "There's no news about the four-dimensional universe." The strategist said in a deep voice, "What about the five-dimensional universe?" The old man said, "Our people have already gone out to look for him. Not only that, I've also asked the strategist sect for help." The strategist sect. The strategist nodded slightly. With their help, it should be easy to find Yi Ling. The old man nodded. They said they already have some clues. Let's get ready to capture him. The strategist immediately said, "Let's go." As soon as he finished speaking, the two of them disappeared from the scene. P.S. I've already bought a small motorcycle. I'm going to replace it with 4 wheels in 2 years. I have a 2-story old house. The decoration is average, but it's livable. With a car and a house, I feel that there's nothing more to pursue in life. I have a weak question. At my age, this is already considered amazing, right? Chapter 884. Yi Ling. The Worldwide Academy had never given up looking for Yi Ling because they knew that Yi Ling was the person Yi Xian cared about the most. If they could find Yi Ling, they would be able to control Yi Xian. Unfortunately, their people had been searching for a long time in the 4th dimension, but there was no news. Therefore, they decided to search in the 5th dimension. However, the intelligence of the Worldwide Academy had never been good. Therefore, they found the strategist sect. The position of the strategist sect in the 5th dimension was a bit special. This special was not because of their strength, but because of their intelligence. It could be said that other than the top forces, the strategist sect's intelligence was the strongest. The strategist sect was also smart. They never participated in any power struggles. They only did intelligence. Anyone, any force, as long as they paid them, they would let you know what you wanted to know. The strategist sect. The strategist sect was located on the Strategist Mountain. This mountain was 90,000 feet high, and the sect was in the middle of a sea of clouds. Standing there, it was like being in a fairyland. At this moment, above the strategist sect, an old man was spinning a wheel, his mouth constantly muttering something. This person was the sect master of the strategist sect, Xian Tiance. Next to Xian Tiance, there was an old man. This person was the great elder of the strategist sect, Chen Qinian. After a while, Xian Tiance suddenly stopped, and the wheel in front of him trembled slightly. At the same time, a light screen appeared not far from him, but it was blurry. Chen Qinian looked at Xian Tiance. "Senior brother?" Xian Tiance said softly. "It will appear soon." Chen Qinian said in a deep voice, "Senior brother, as far as I know, Yi Xian values his sister, Yi Ling. If we find his sister for the Worldwide Academy, I'm afraid. You also know that he has Fu Wenzong behind him." Fu Wenzong. Xian Tiance nodded. "Of course I know that he has Fu Wenzong behind him, but now that the Worldwide Academy and Fu Wenzong are at war, and we are so close to the Worldwide Academy. If we don't take sides, do you think the Worldwide Academy will let us go?" Chen Qinian said in a deep voice, "We have never participated in worldly affairs, Xian Tiansu said, "that was before. Now we have to participate. Of course, we don't have to get too involved. We're just providing information to the Worldwide Academy, aren't we?" Chen Qinian sighed softly and did not say anything else. Shen Tiansu continued, moreover, the Worldwide Academy's remuneration is not small. It would be a waste not to earn it. Chen Qinian was about to speak when the screen of light before them suddenly trembled. It didn't take long for a wasteland to appear on the screen of light. Seeing this wasteland, Shen Tian's frowned slightly. Why does it look a bit familiar? At this time, the screen moved forward and soon came to a door. When they saw this door, Shen Tian's and Chen Qinian's expressions changed. It's the Azura Hell. Oh my god. After saying that, he was about to put away the roulette. At this moment, a little girl appeared on the screen. The little girl was wearing a short black dress and her eyes were as black as the abyss. The little girl looked in front of her. You're looking for me? Hearing this, Shen Tian's knelt down with a thud and said in a trembling voice, Empress, this is a misunderstanding. At this moment, an old man quietly appeared behind Shen Tian's. Shen Tian's expression changed greatly and he quickly kowtowed. Empress, spare me, this is what the Worldwide Academy told me to do. Empress, spare me. At this moment, Shen Tian's head was pounding like garlic. Chen Qinian was also extremely shocked, and his whole body was trembling. Shura Empress. Among the 6 powerhouses in the world, this Shura Empress was the most powerful existence. In this woman's eyes, there were only the living and the dead. The old man behind Shen Tian's was about to make a move, but at this moment, Yiling suddenly turned around and the old man disappeared. The roulette in Shen Tian's hand directly exploded. At the same time, Shen Tian's eyes directly exploded and blood splashed. At this moment, the entire Shen Tian sect began to collapse layer by layer. In less than a few breaths, the entire Heavenly Strategist sect turned into dust. However, Shen Tian's was still alive, but he had lost his eyes and his cultivation. He had completely become a cripple. At this time, the strategist and the others arrived. When they saw this scene, the strategist and the others were stunned. A moment later, the strategist quickly appeared in front of Shen Tian's. Old Shen, this is? Shen Tian's knelt on the ground. He was silent for a long time. Finally, he got up and said softly, My Heavenly Strategist sect has offended a peerless powerhouse. The strategist frowned slightly. Peerless powerhouse? Who? Shen Tian's shook his head. It doesn't matter. After saying that, he turned around and left. At this time the strategist quickly said, Old Shen, that Yiling. Shen Tian stopped inside. I almost found her. Unfortunately. After saying that, he shook his head. I can be sure that she is in the 5th dimension, but where she is, the old man doesn't know. After saying that, he walked into the distance. In the same place, the strategist looked in the direction that Shen Tian's left and said softly, This matter is a bit strange. Go and find out who did it just now. Behind him, a man quietly left. At this time, an old man said in a deep voice, That Yiling is in the 5th dimension. The strategist nodded. As long as she is in the 5th dimension. After saying that, he turned his head and looked in front of him. Now, there was only a ruin in front of him. The strategist frowned slightly. Who has such powerful strength to be able to destroy this celestial strategist sect so easily? The old man nodded. To be able to destroy a sect so easily, it is definitely not an ordinary person or an ordinary force. I really don't know who this celestial strategist sect provoked to be completely destroyed. It is not an ordinary tragedy. The strategist shook his head. This matter will naturally be investigated. I will give you a task. Use all the intelligence of the academy to find this Yi Xian. Not only our people, but also other sections. You must find this Yiling. The old man nodded and then turned around and left. The strategist slowly closed his eyes. Yiling. His goal was to find Yiling. Because Yi Xian had Fu Wenzong's protection, it was very difficult to kill Yi Xian. And Yiling was Yi Xian's flaw. Once this flaw was found, the Worldwide Academy could defeat Yi Xian in one blow. At this time the strategist said again, Find this Yiling at all costs. In the distance, Shen Tian stopped. He suddenly knelt on the ground and burst into tears. At this moment, he was crying like a child. In any case, the Celestial Strategist sect had been passed down for tens of thousands of years. Moreover, it was getting stronger and stronger. However, it was destroyed in his hands. As if thinking of something, Shen Tian suddenly raised his head and roared, "Worldwide Academy!" His voice was full of resentment. If it wasn't for the Worldwide Academy, the Celestial Strategist sect wouldn't have caused such a disaster.
Find Yiling? Yi Xian's younger sister?
Shen Tian suddenly roared again. Find your ancestor. Find your ancestor from the Worldwide Academy.
After a while, Shen Tian gradually calmed down. At this moment, he suddenly thought of something. That was, he didn't find the wrong person. He was looking for Yiling. Then there was a problem. Why did he look for the Shura Empress? As if thinking of something, Shen Tian's face instantly changed. The Shura Empress is Yiling. In fact, he already had this idea from the beginning. However, at that time he felt that it was ridiculous. Coupled with the sadness in his heart, he didn't think much about it. But now that he thought about it carefully, he realized that the Shura Empress was very likely to be Yiling. The Shura Empress was Yi Xian's younger sister? Shen Tian's scalp went numb as he thought about it. Yi Xian. After a while, Shen Tian slowly walked into the distance. His top priority now was to recover his body. Then he would go and seek refuge with Yi Xian. Naturally, he wanted to make a comeback. To make a comeback, he needed help. He couldn't count on the Worldwide Academy anymore. Now that his sect had been annihilated, he didn't have the slightest value to the academy. He could only look for someone else. And he decided to look for Yi Xian. Fu Wenzong. Fu Wenzong also received the news that the Celestial Strategist sect had been destroyed. Regarding this sudden incident, Fu Wenzong was also shocked. After all, although the Celestial Strategist sect wasn't that powerful, it wasn't that weak either. Who could have destroyed the Celestial Strategist sect without a sound? Inside the Rune Palace, Shen Xinghe was silent for a long time. Finally, he looked at Lu Yong beside him. Send someone to investigate and find out who did it. Lu Yong nodded. I've already sent someone to investigate, but I'm afraid there won't be any results. The other party was able to destroy the Celestial Strategist sect so easily. This kind of expert, if he doesn't want others to know, it will be very difficult for outsiders to find out. Shen Xinghe nodded slightly. Indeed. As he spoke, he stood up and looked into the distance. There was a trace of worry in his eyes. I wonder how the little Grandmaster is doing. Yi Xian. They were very worried about Yi Xian. Although Yi Xian was strong enough, there were also crouching tigers and hidden dragons in the fifth dimension. At this moment, Lu Yong suddenly said, that Miss Xueqi seems to be about to break through. Break through. Shen Xinghe hurriedly said, let's go. After speaking, he left the Rune Palace with Lu Yong and the others. Protect Xueqi. Fu Wenzong attached great importance to Xueqi and Enlancio because these two women's talent was too terrifying. It could be said that if Yi Xian didn't use those external objects, he might not be able to defeat these two women. Azura Hell. After Yiling destroyed the Celestial Strategist sect, she turned around and walked towards the door. At this moment, the two old men behind her suddenly knelt on one knee. One of them said fiercely, Master, the Worldwide Academy actually issued a warrant for Master. They deserve to die. Master, please allow me to lead 300 Azura cavalry to trample the Worldwide Academy. Yiling stopped in her tracks. No need. The old man was about to speak when Yiling turned her head and looked in the direction of the Worldwide Academy. Aren't they looking for me? I'll go personally. After speaking, she suddenly disappeared. Chapter 885. Within the Worldwide Academy. Within the study, Chen Tian looked at the ancient book in his hands quietly. Every day, he would take some time out to read. This was what the Prophet had requested of them, and after so many years, he had gotten used to it. As though he thought of something, Chen Tian put down the book in his hands and looked ahead. Is there any news of Yi Xian? Where Chen Tian's gaze landed, an old man appeared like a specter. The old man wore a loose robe, his hands hidden in his sleeves, and he exuded a chilling aura. The old man shook his head. There is no news of Chen Yiming at the moment. However, since he has agreed to appear, it should not be a problem. Chen Yiming, one of the 6 headmasters of the Worldwide Academy. Chen Tian asked softly, what about the other 5? The old man replied solemnly, the other 5 did not respond to us. However,
If there comes a day when the academy faces a life and death situation, I believe that they and the headmaster will appear. Chen Tian shook his head and laughed. Elder Yu Shuang, do you think that it's because I'm the academy master that they are not returning? The old man called Yu Shuang shook his head. You have your reasons, but it is not entirely your fault.
After teacher disappeared, most of them went to look for him. To them, the academy with teacher is their academy. This is also the reason why they did not come out to fight for the position. However, some of them left because of you. After all, after you took over, everything you did was different from when teacher was still around. Chen Tian said in a light voice. All those years ago, teacher established the Myriad Dimension Academy with the intention of enlightening all living beings. The academy doesn't select people based on natural talent or background. So long as one is willing to learn, then anyone can enter my Myriad Dimension Academy. Even those students that represent a power are able to enter my Myriad Dimension Academy. But Sir didn't think that after these people finished their studies in the Worldwide Academy, they wouldn't be used by the Worldwide Academy at all. Yu Shuang said, although these people are not used by my Worldwide Academy, my Worldwide Academy still has students all over the 5 dimensions. Who would dare to bully my Worldwide Academy? Chen Tian looked at Yu Shuang. That is because teacher is here. With teacher around, the multidimensional universe has order. Who dares to bully my Worldwide Academy? But teacher is no longer here. Yu Shuang was silent. Actually, he also knew that when the prophet was around, the prophet could do whatever he wanted. Because the prophet was powerful, no one dared to bully the Worldwide Academy. However, now that the prophet had disappeared, there was no one in the Worldwide Academy who could control the 5-dimensional universe. Even if she was a female teacher, she could only protect the Worldwide Academy at most. It was impossible for her to manage other forces. Therefore, after the prophet disappeared, many of the policies that he left behind could no longer be implemented. This was because the Worldwide Academy was no longer the leader. They would no longer listen to the Worldwide Academy. At this time, Yu Shuang sighed. Actually, it wasn't easy for you. At that time, the experts of the Worldwide Academy had all left and disappeared. When Chen Tian took over, he was only at the Yin-Yang realm. At that time, if not for the prophet's influence, the Worldwide Academy would have been long gone. Although many forces were still afraid of the Worldwide Academy, in their hearts, they no longer revere this place. As if thinking of something, Yu Shuang said. However, there is one thing that you did that was very unwise. It was that Yi Xian.
Because of this person, many of our people have died.
Chen Tian was silent. Yu Shuang continued. Presently, my Myriad Dimension Academy has entered into conflict with the Talisman sect. It can be said that since we've been targeting Yi Xian, we haven't obtained the slightest benefit, and we've suffered incessant deaths instead. Furthermore, our Worldwide Academy has become like a secular power, fighting for power. This has gone against Mr.'s original intentions.
AI.
Chen Tian spoke softly. We have no way out. That Yi Xian has gained the recognition of the World Prison Pagoda. We are fated to fight to the death with him, unless we are willing to hand over the Universal Library to him. As for him, Qing, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as the prince shall be removed, and Yi Lang shall take over.
The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face.
This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi clan's elders. Why?
Right at this time, a timid voice rang out in the ancestral hall.
Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door.
She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt.
Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak.
There was even a trace of fear in her eyes.
This girl was called Yi Ling, and was Yi Xian's sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she disregarded her illness and rushed over.
The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing?
The girl called Yi Ling bowed to everyone in the ancestral hall, and asked timidly, Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason?
The great elder looked coldly at Yi Ling. This is a clan matter. What are you butting in for?
Leave. Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful.
She did not dare to look the great elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, "Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince."
Impudent!
The great elder suddenly raged. "Whether he's stripped or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time the new prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. "He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The great elder replied coldly, "Then flog him 30 times.
Very quickly, 2 Yi clan's guards rushed in.
Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he's fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the title of prince.
What are you yelling about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap!
A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry, and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard quickly bowed. "This subordinate, Zhang Mu, greets the prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the prince, I'll need 10 guards.
You can be my guard from now on."
Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and quickly bowed deeply. "This subordinate will go through fire and water for the prince, and I'll do anything for you." Yi Lang nodded. "Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Don't hold back, understand?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood.
He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out.
At this moment, Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something, and he suddenly stopped. Inside the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside the hall. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and the robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang, and was about to speak. At this moment, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pang! Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there, and charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Puh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, tears welled up in her eyes. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts!" Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu, and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pang! Ching ching! Yi Clan. Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides, there were the elders of the Yi clan. "Why?" Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that Yi Xian was to be replaced, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the hall and asked timidly, "Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason?" The Great Elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan. What are you interrupting for? Leave." Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the Great Elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, "Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. This is truly unfair. Impudent." The Great Elder suddenly raged. "Whether or not he's crippled, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time the new prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. "He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The Great Elder replied coldly, "Then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, 2 Yi clan guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he's fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the title of prince. What are you shouting for?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. But she did not cry, and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard quickly bowed. "This subordinate, Zhang Mu, greets the prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the prince, I'll need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and quickly bowed deeply. "This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the prince, even if it means death." Yi Lang nodded. "Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't hold back, understand?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu suddenly stopped as if he had seen something. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and the robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The Great Elder narrowed his eyes, and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang, and was about to speak. At this moment, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pang! Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there, and charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Puh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts!" Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu, and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pang! Chapter 886. Yi Ling let go of Chen Tian and looked to her right. A middle-aged man stood there. He wore a gray robe, held an ancient scroll in his left hand, and held a long brush in his right. He seemed extremely refined and quiet. The sect master of calligraphy. Someone exclaimed with shock. The sect master of calligraphy's original name was Lin Xiaoshu, and he was one of the 6 original sect masters. He was a top-rate expert of the Worldwide Academy all those years ago. The members of the Worldwide Academy instantly heaved sighs of relief when they saw this person. The current Worldwide Academy wasn't the Worldwide Academy of all those years ago. Even if the Prophet hadn't been there all those years ago, the Shura Empress wouldn't have been able to act so wantonly in the Worldwide Academy. After all, besides the Prophet, there were also countless other experts. Unfortunately, the experts of the Myriad Dimension Academy that could make a move were very few, and it was utterly impossible for these few people to go against the Azura Empress. Fortunately, there was a headmaster who had come. Yi Ling gazed at Lin Xiaoshu, and the latter glanced at the surroundings before he chuckled. "Empress, may I know how my Worldwide Academy has offended you to make you so angry?" Yi Ling didn't say anything, and she just flicked her sleeve. Lin Xiaoshu suddenly tapped lightly with his brush in the air. Bang! An invisible wave suddenly rippled out in front of them. In the next moment, everyone watched as Lin Xiaoshu retreated repeatedly, and he only stopped after moving almost 3 kilometers back. However, the Shura Empress hadn't moved even half a step. The expressions of the countless experts of the Worldwide Academy instantly fell when they witnessed this scene. The sect master of calligraphy glanced at the brush in his hand, and it had completely cracked open. The sect master of calligraphy gazed at the Shura in the distance. "Empress, do you really intend to destroy my Worldwide Academy?" Lin Xiaoshu's face was expressionless as she walked slowly towards the sect master of calligraphy. "Wasn't I wanted by the Worldwide Academy?" Venerable calligrapher looked at Chen Tian, who was not far away, and asked, "What happened?" Chen Tian said in a deep voice, "We are after Yi Xian's younger sister, but we didn't expect Yi Ling to look so similar to the Empress." Reverend Calligraphy frowned slightly. "Put a warrant for Yi Xian's sister? Why?" Chen Tian was silent. At this moment, Yi Ling suddenly said, "He definitely wants to use his sister to threaten her, right?" Speaking up to this point, her expression suddenly became ferocious. Because at this moment, she thought of many things. In the lower realms, she'd been used to threaten that young man on more than one occasion, and that young man had almost died many times for her sake. When she thought up to here, a strand of indescribable flames of rage suddenly arose in Yi Ling's heart. In the next moment, she suddenly flipped her palm. Boom! At this moment, dozens of academies in the surroundings were directly reduced to ashes. Seeing this scene, Lin Xiaoshu and Chen Tian's expressions immediately sank. If this Shura Empress didn't give up, it would be a disaster for the Worldwide Academy. Currently, the only person in the Worldwide Academy who could face this Empress head-on was the female teacher. However, they didn't know where the female teacher was. In the distance, Yi Ling looked around coldly. Finally, her gaze fell on Chen Tian. "Those who used to be in the Worldwide Academy can all be called outstanding people, but you've done such a despicable thing. You've really disgraced the ancestors of the Worldwide Academy." As she spoke, she suddenly clenched her right hand. Boom! In an instant, a powerful force gathered in the area. At the same time, the sky above the Myriad Dimensions Academy suddenly darkened. Countless black clouds gathered, and within those black clouds, countless evil spirits roared. Seeing this scene, all the experts of the Worldwide Academy were shocked. This was the destruction of the Worldwide Academy. Chen Tian's face was full of fear. What had he done? Wasn't he looking for Yi Ling? Why did he find a killing god? "Empress, please show mercy." At this moment, a voice suddenly came from afar. Soon, a man appeared not far from Yi Ling. The man wore a blue robe, had long hair, and held a black flute in his hand. Lu Shidi. Some of the experts of the Worldwide Academy immediately recognized the man's identity. This man was one of the former 6 headmasters of the Worldwide Academy. Lu Shidi looked at the angry Yi Ling and quickly cupped his fists. "Empress, this is the fault of the Worldwide Academy. Please show mercy." Yi Ling looked at Lu Shidi without saying a word. The force around them was getting stronger and stronger. Lu Shidi said in a low voice, "Empress, please give face to my teacher." "Prophet." Yi Ling frowned slightly. She didn't make a move, but the force around them didn't disappear either. Lu Shidi said again, "Empress, my teacher founded the Worldwide Academy for the sake of the 5 dimensions and the world. Although it isn't as good as it used to be, it shouldn't be destroyed just like that.
Please give face to my teacher and show mercy. Yi Ling was silent. Lu Shidi and the others were also silent. They knew that whether or not the Worldwide Academy would be spared depended on Yi Ling's decision. Of course, the Worldwide Academy wasn't completely defenseless. However, they didn't want to fight to the death. Because once that happened, even if the Worldwide Academy could stop the Empress, it could be said that it would suffer a great deal of damage. At this moment, Yi Ling suddenly looked up. Above the clouds in the sky, the space there trembled slightly. She frowned slightly, and the next moment, she disappeared. Seeing the Empress disappear, everyone present heaved a sigh of relief. This Empress of the Shura was really too terrifying. Lu Shidi looked up at the sky and said softly, "Someone has made a move." Lin Xiaoshu asked, "Is it her?" Lu Shidi shook his head. "I didn't sense her aura." Lin Xiaoshu was silent. At this moment, Lu Shidi suddenly looked around and said softly, "Today is a humiliation for the Worldwide Academy." Humiliation. Hearing this, everyone present was silent. Today, the Worldwide Academy was almost destroyed by the Empress of the Shura alone. It could be said that this was indeed an extremely humiliating matter. After all, when the Prophet was still around, who would dare to act presumptuously in the Worldwide Academy? Who would dare? Even without the Prophet, the teacher, and the others, who would dare to bully the Worldwide Academy at that time? At this moment, Lin Xiaoshu suddenly looked at Chen Tian, who was in soul form nearby. "Why are you looking for Yi Ling?" Chen Tian was silent. Lu Shidi suddenly said, "Although this is a bit despicable, it is not entirely his fault. I have already investigated Yi Xian. He is not an ordinary person, especially the mysterious swordsman behind him. Her strength is definitely not weaker than ours. Maybe even stronger. And Yi Xian's biggest weakness is that Yi Ling. If we can find Yi Ling, we can naturally subdue Yi Xian with a small price." Unfortunately, we did not expect that Yi Ling and the Empress of the Shura would look so similar, so much so that we have provoked the Empress. At this point he shook his head. It had to be said that this time, the Worldwide Academy's actions were very stupid. It could be said that outsiders would not sympathize with the Worldwide Academy, nor would they think that the Empress of the Shura was bullying others. They would only laugh at the Worldwide Academy for seeking death. Put out a warrant for the Empress of the Shura? Everyone knew that soon, the Worldwide Academy would become the joke of the entire fifth dimension. At this moment, Chen Tian suddenly said, "This matter is my fault." Lu Shidi looked at Chen Tian. "Of course it is your fault. From now on, you are no longer the Academy Master of the Worldwide Academy." At this point he paused and then said, "This matter has become so big and so stupid. If I do not punish you, it will be difficult to convince the public." Chen Tian was silent. Lu Shidi looked at Lin Xiaoshu. "You do it." Lin Xiaoshu shook his head. "You know that I do not like to do these troublesome things. You do it." Lu Shidi was silent. Lin Xiaoshu said again, "Someone has to bear the responsibility." Lu Shidi nodded. "Yes." After that, he turned to look at a certain place and said softly, "We must open the Worldwide Library. Only this treasure vault left behind by teacher is able to change the current situation of our Myriad Dimension Academy." Lin Xiaoshu said in a deep voice, "That world prison pagoda is in Yi Xian's hands and it has already recognized him as its master." Lu Shidi said softly, "Then take it back." Lin Xiaoshu looked at Lu Shidi. Lu Shidi smiled and said, "That world prison pagoda originally belongs to our Worldwide Academy. It is only right and proper for us to take it back, isn't it?" Lin Xiaoshu said in a deep voice, "He will not easily hand it over to us. Moreover, from what I know, that pagoda does not seem to be in his hands right now." Lu Shidi smiled. "That pagoda has already recognized him as its master. As long as he is willing, that pagoda can return to his hands at any time." Lin Xiaoshu was silent. Not far away, Chen Tian looked at Lu Shidi and Lin Xiaoshu. At this moment he suddenly understood. These people did not come back for the Worldwide Academy. Their real goal was the Worldwide Library. It was teacher's treasury. Thinking of this, Chen Tian shook his head and smiled. At this moment, he remembered the words of the Prophet. The most unpredictable thing in the world is the human heart. The most volatile thing in the world is also the human heart. At this moment, Chen Tian suddenly felt disheartened. Without thinking much, Chen Tian turned and left. In the distance, Lin Xiaoshu looked at Chen Tian.
Lu Shidi said softly. This time he did such a stupid thing. Letting him live is already giving teacher face back then. After saying this, he looked at Lin Xiaoshu. Go inform all the experts of the Worldwide Academy outside. Tell them that our Worldwide Academy has reached a moment of life and death. Lin Xiaoshu frowned. Will they come back? Lu Shidi nodded. They will. Because they won't just watch as the Myriad Dimension Academy declines.
Lin Xiaoshu nodded and turned to leave.
Lu Shidi turned and looked not far away. That was where the Worldwide Library was located. Inside, there were treasures left behind by the Prophet. After a moment of silence, Lu Shidi turned and left. After the news of the Shura Empress being wanted by the Worldwide Academy, the entire Worldwide Academy became a laughingstock. The Shura Empress. It could be said that no one wanted to provoke the Shura Empress. Who didn't want to avoid this place? However, the Worldwide Academy actually wanted to arrest the Shura Empress. Wasn't they tired of living? Somewhere in the clouds, Yi Xian was currently fighting with the sword spirit woman. On his back, he carried a giant sword and in his hand was a light sword. When fighting with the sword spirit woman, when he used the light sword, his sword was like thunder and as fast as lightning. When he switched to the heavy sword, his style changed abruptly. Under his sword, it was as heavy as 1,000 caddies, splitting the heavens and splitting the earth.
Chapter 887.
After practicing for an unknown period of time, Yi Xian stopped. At this moment, his whole body was drenched in sweat. Tired. That was how he felt at the moment. Using a heavy sword and a light sword was too taxing on the mind. Especially a heavy sword. Switching to a heavy sword consumed a lot of energy, while a light sword consumed a lot of the soul because a light sword was a flying sword. At this moment, the sword spirit woman not far away suddenly said, "You've learned well."
Yi Xian looked at the sword spirit woman.
The sword spirit said, "But it's still not enough.
You haven't switched fast enough.
You have to switch fast enough, so fast that the other party can't even react when your sword has switched." Yi Xian nodded. "I understand. I will continue to work hard."
The sword spirit nodded.
She looked at the executing heaven sword at Yi Xian's waist. "Can I have a look at this sword?"
Yi Xian nodded.
He took down the executing heaven sword and handed it to the sword spirit. The sword spirit took the executing heaven sword. She gently stroked the sword and said softly, "Your sword is really sharp." Yi Xian smiled. "Miss Sword Spirit, as far as I know, you are also a sword, right?" The sword spirit looked at Yi Xian. "Yes." Yi Xian said, "Can I have a look at the sword spirit's real body?" The sword spirit shook her head slightly. "In terms of sharpness, I can't compare to your sword. In terms of realm, I can't compare to the sword that hurt me before." As she spoke, she handed the executing heaven sword to Yi Xian. "You have great luck. You have a sword that others can never have in their lifetime. You must cherish it." Yi Xian took the executing heaven sword and said, "There's another sword." With that, he took out the soul-suppressing sword. When she saw the soul-suppressing sword, a trace of surprise flashed in the sword spirit's eyes. "This sword's soul." As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian. "You're amazing. One sword is extremely sharp, and the other sword can restrain the soul." Yi Xian smiled. "I'm lucky." The sword spirit nodded. "Both swords are very good. Treasure them well." As she spoke, she seemed to have thought of something. She looked at the soul-suppressing sword and said softly, "If you use this sword to perform Master Sword Soul skill, the power will not be ordinary." Yi Xian said seriously, "That's what I think too. However, can I cultivate Sword Soul skills now?" The sword spirit said, "There's no hurry. The most important thing for you now is to practice your sword rules well. You have to practice switching between the heavy sword and the light sword to the extreme. Moreover, you have to learn to switch at the right time, and not switch at will. Also, you have to find the right time to use your immeasurable sword, and strive to kill when you strike. Understand?" Boundless sword. Yi Xian nodded. He hadn't grasped the timing of the boundless sword well. The boundless sword was a flying sword. After using the heart sword mantra, its speed was much faster than before. Moreover, the distance it could cover was also much greater. However, this sword strike had to be timed in order to kill in one strike. Opportunity. To put it simply, it required combat experience. The sword spirit looked at Lien wanly. If you two practice it, it will be very beneficial to you as well. The corners of Lien Wanli's mouth curled up slightly. That's exactly what I was thinking. As soon as she finished speaking, she opened her palm, and the azure dragon saber suddenly appeared in her hand. She looked at Yi Xian, and without any nonsense, she slashed the saber towards Yi Xian. The azure dragon roared as she swung the saber. In the distance, the corners of Yi Xian's mouth curled up slightly, and he directly vanished on the spot. A ray of sword light flashed across the field. Bang! An explosion suddenly resounded in the field. After the sword spirit glanced at the two of them, she turned to look outside. After a while, she walked outside. In next to no time, she arrived outside, and a middle-aged man stood not too far away from her. The middle-aged man had a saber hanging horizontally behind his waist. The middle-aged man glanced behind the sword spirit. "Where is this?" The sword spirit looked at the middle-aged man and asked in reply, "Who are you?" The middle-aged man said, "I'm here." This chapter is not finished. Please continue to the next page. Chen Yiming. If there were outsiders here, they would definitely be shocked. Chen Yiming was a famous saber cultivator in the 5th dimension. He was known as the Saber Monarch, and he was also one of the 6 leaders of the Worldwide Academy. Unfortunately, the sword spirit in front of him did not recognize him. The sword spirit looked at Chen Yiming. This place does not welcome outsiders. Chen Yiming shook his head. The person I am looking for is inside. The sword spirit slightly frowned. Yi Xian. Chen Yiming nodded. It's him. The sword spirit suddenly disappeared, and a ray of sword light slashed towards Chen Yiming. In front of him, Chen Yiming lightly took a step back, and his body slightly leaned to the side, dodging the sword by a hair's breadth. However, at this moment, that ray of sword light suddenly slashed horizontally. Chi! The sound of air being torn suddenly resounded. But this sword slashed empty air. The sword spirit looked in front of him, and Chen Yiming had unknowingly retreated a few meters. The sword spirit looked at Chen Yiming, and she suddenly disappeared. The space in front of Chen Yiming suddenly split open, and a ray of sword light appeared. Chen Yiming's face was expressionless. His right hand suddenly grabbed forward, and then he squeezed. This squeeze directly caught a ray of sword light. The next moment, he lightly exerted force with 2 fingers. Bang! The ray of sword light shattered, and a figure retreated explosively. It was the sword spirit. When the sword spirit stopped, she looked at Chen Yiming, and at this moment, there was a trace of seriousness in her eyes. This person in front of her had crushed her without even drawing his saber. She wasn't a match for him. Very strong. At this moment, Chen Yiming suddenly said, "You aren't the person I want to kill. Tell that Yi Xian to come out." The sword spirit was about to speak, but at this moment, Yi Xian walked out from not too far away. When she saw Yi Xian, the sword spirit said in a low voice, "This person is very strong." Yi Xian nodded, and he looked at the distant Chen Yiming. At this moment, Lien Qian's voice suddenly resounded in his mind. "It's the Saber Monarch. This person is extremely strong, and you aren't a match for him." "Not a match for him." Yi Xian's face sank. "Miss Lien Qian, this is too much of a blow to me." Lien Qian said in a low voice, "You really aren't a match for him." Yi Xian looked at Chen Yiming and said softly, "Even if I'm not a match for him, I still have to fight." Lien Qian was silent. At this moment, Chen Yiming looked at Yi Xian. He sized up Yi Xian and slightly nodded. No wonder Chen Tian was helpless. "Not bad. Come, draw your sword." Draw his sword. Yi Xian looked at Chen Yiming. He opened his palm, and the book world appeared in his hand. At this moment, Chen Yiming suddenly said, "Don't use this." As soon as he finished speaking, his realm was directly suppressed to the universe realm. This realm was the same as Yi Xian's current realm, and even lower than Chen Tian's realm. Yi Xian was silent. The other party was very confident. At this moment, Lien Qian said, "Be careful." Yi Xian nodded, and he looked at Chen Yiming. He suddenly disappeared, and the next moment, a sword slashed at Chen Yiming. Chen Yiming took a step back with his right foot. This step was very slow, as if he was taking a stroll. However, it was this step that allowed Yi Xian's sword to slash at thin air. Yi Xian's sword slashed at thin air, but he didn't stop. He leaped up, and the sword in his hand stabbed forward as fast as lightning. Opposite Yi Xian, Chen Yiming moved sideways, and Yi Xian's sword slashed at thin air again. However, at this moment, Yi Xian's sword suddenly flew out. Immeasurable sword. With regards to this sword, Yi Xian was very confident, because the person in front of him was too arrogant. And the opponent's arrogance was his chance. Therefore, after 2 consecutive failures, he directly used immeasurable sword for the third sword. However, he was dumbfounded when he unleashed the attack. No. This chapter is not finished, please continue to the next page. In the distance, Chen Yiming was still standing there, holding a blade in his hand, and this blade was blocking a sword. It was blocked. Yi Xian looked at Chen Yiming. Although his expression was calm, his heart was in turmoil. Chen Yiming said softly, "Your sword is not bad. Whether it is the timing, speed or power, they are all top-notch." Yi Xian said, "You were sent by Chen Tian?" Chen Yiming shook his head. "He can't order me around, I came to find you myself." Yi Xian looked at Chen Yiming. "You are the one who wants to kill me." Chen Yiming nodded. "Come, continue to attack." Yi Xian nodded. "Okay." As his voice faded, he suddenly disappeared. In the distance, Chen Yiming unhurriedly placed the blade in his hand behind his back. At this moment, a ray of sword light appeared in front of his eyebrows, and he used his fingers to clamp it. He was very confident, because Yi Xian's sword speed wasn't enough to threaten him. However, at this moment, the sword in Yi Xian's hand suddenly turned into a heavy sword, and he used 2 fingers to clamp this heavy sword. However, the strength of this sword was completely different. Bang! Chen Yiming instantly retreated several meters. After he stopped, he looked at his right hand. His entire right hand was full of cracks. Yi Xian's sword just now almost destroyed his entire right hand. Chen Yiming looked at Yi Xian. Very interesting. Yi Xian put away his heavy sword and changed to a light sword. His figure suddenly disappeared, and he once again used the immeasurable sword. In the distance, bang! Yi Xian's sword was blocked by Chen Yiming's blade. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly pulled out the heavy sword from his back and fiercely slashed forward. Chen Yiming didn't retreat. He used his blade to block. Bang! A strong force exploded in front of the 2 of them. This time, Chen Yiming didn't retreat even half a step, while Yi Xian returned to his original position. However, the moment he stopped, the sword in his hand flew out again. The immeasurable sword. In the distance, Chen Yiming used his blade to block. Bang! Yi Xian's sword was directly deflected, but Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of Chen Yiming. He held the deflected sword and fiercely slashed forward. At this moment, Chen Yiming suddenly used his blade to block. Bang! Before Yi Xian's sword landed, he felt a sharp pain in his chest. Then, he once again returned to his original position. Yi Xian was silent. From start to finish, this person in front of him didn't draw his blade. If the other party had drawn his blade, he would already be dead. Chen Yiming suddenly walked towards Yi Xian. According to what I know, within the same year, there aren't many who are more outstanding than you. Unfortunately, you are my academy's enemy. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Have you ever thought about why I became your academy's enemy?" Chen Yiming stopped and looked at Yi Xian. "Because that tower is in your hands." Yi Xian smiled. "Why is that tower in my hands?" Chen Yiming was silent. In a certain space, Lian Chen shook her head. This guy, if he could win, he wouldn't talk nonsense. If he couldn't win, he would reason. At this moment, Yi Xian added, "Because the tower recognized me as its master." "Sir, is it my fault or the academy's fault that the tower recognized me as its master? Or is it teacher's fault?" Chen Yiming frowned slightly. "Teacher?" Yi Xian said seriously, "To be honest, I am teacher's new student. Moreover, I have received teacher's inheritance and control most of the Tao laws. Strictly speaking, you should call me junior. Do you really want us to fight each other?" Lian Qian. P.S. Let me ask everyone a question. What is your average monthly income? I want to see what kind of industry is more popular. End of this chapter. Chapter 888. Opposite Yi Xian, Chen Yiming was silent. Seeing Chen Yiming's silence, Yi Xian said, "Senior brother Chen." At this time, Chen Yiming suddenly said, "Why did you kill my students?" Yi Xian said, "Chen Tian and the others wanted to kill me." In order to protect myself, I could only kill. Chen Yiming shook his head. You are a flowery person with no truth. Yi Xian said, but Xiao Ta recognized me as his master, didn't he? Chen Yiming nodded. I know. As he spoke, he looked at Yi Xian. Take one strike from me. If you don't die after one strike, I'll do another. Yi Xian. Chen Yiming placed his left hand on the hilt of the saber behind his waist. He stepped forward and a saber intent enveloped Yi Xian. Yi Xian was about to speak when Lian Qian suddenly said, Run! Run! Yi Xian looked at Chen Yiming and shook his head. He knew that if he ran now, it would become a thorn in his heart, a thorn that could never be removed. Moreover, he believed that he couldn't escape. Even with the immeasurable sword, he couldn't escape. Moreover, he didn't think about running. Wasn't it just taking 2 strikes? Who was afraid of who? Yi Xian said, Can I use any method? Chen Yiming nodded. Yes. Yi Xian said with a smile. Come on. Chen Yiming nodded, drew his saber and slashed. It was a very casual Dao drawing slash. However, Yi Xian's expression changed drastically in an instant. Not only Yi Xian, but the sword spirit's expression also turned grave at this moment. She couldn't take this strike. Could Yi Xian take it? The sword spirit looked at Yi Xian. At this time, a 7-colored talisman suddenly flew out from between Yi Xian's eyebrows. World-breaking talisman. Facing Chen Yiming, Yi Xian didn't dare to hold back. He directly used the 7-colored talisman that Fu Wanzong had given him. The moment the talisman appeared, it suddenly turned into a sword tip and disappeared. Break the world. Boom. Space suddenly split apart because it wasn't able to endure the might of the talisman at all. Boom. Along with an explosion, the sound of shattering resounded. After a short moment, a talisman floated down from above Yi Xian. It was the 7-colored talisman. At this moment, the 7-colored talisman had already lost its luster. Damaged. Fortunately, he managed to block Chen Yiming's saber. Yi Xian put away the 7-colored talisman and looked at Chen Yiming. Chen Yiming nodded. As expected of a talisman drawn by him. It is indeed powerful. No wonder Master regarded him so highly in the past. As he spoke, he looked at Yi Xian. Take another strike from me. This time I won't hold back. As soon as he finished speaking, he took a step forward, and then the saber in his hand suddenly flew forward. It was a very slow strike, and it didn't carry any saber energy or glow. It was just a very simple strike. On the other hand, Yi Xian's countenance had turned pale at this moment. He knew that if he didn't use his full strength, then he would definitely die. Yi Xian didn't dare hold back at all. He suddenly stomped his right foot against the ground. When the saber arrived around 3 m away from him, a blood-red prisoner character suddenly appeared above the saber. At the same time, a strand of red light enveloped the entire saber. However, bang! The blood-red prisoner character instantly vanished. However, the saber had become much more illusory. Meanwhile, the saber had arrived before the center of Yi Xian's forehead. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly roared furiously, and a mysterious force suddenly appeared around him. The sword domain. It wasn't just the sword domain, there was the spatial Dao laws as well. Both of them were suppressing him at the same time. Bang! The saber suddenly stopped. However, at this moment, the saber had already pierced half an inch into the center of Yi Xian's forehead. The entire saber trembled violently, and so did Yi Xian's body. He was almost unable to withstand the power of this saber. Opposite Yi Xian, Chen Yiming didn't withdraw his saber, nor did he attack again. He just looked at Yi Xian. If he wanted to kill Yi Xian now, he only needed a single thought. Because if he attacked again, Yi Xian wouldn't be able to withstand it no matter what. However, he didn't draw his saber. Chen Yiming opened his palm, and the saber between Yi Xian's eyebrows suddenly flew into his hand. He turned and left. Behind him, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Why?" Chen Yiming stopped and said softly, "I really want to kill you because you are very outstanding. You are an enemy of the Academy, and the Academy will be in danger in the future." But, saying this, he raised his head and looked at the horizon, and said softly, "Teacher once told me that no matter how strong my saber is, it can't be stronger than reason. I asked him what reason is, and he said that reason is in his heart." Saying this, he turned and looked at Yi Xian, Xiao Ta isn't from the Worldwide Academy, and the Universal Library isn't from the Worldwide Academy. The Worldwide Academy doesn't have the right to take these two things for themselves. Xiao Ta recognized you as his master, so it's yours. The Academy is targeting you, and this is the Academy's fault. If I come to kill you because of this, then it's my fault. However, if one day you want to destroy the Academy, I will definitely kill you. Saying this, he turned and left. At this moment, Lian Qian suddenly appeared beside Yi Xian. She glanced at Chen Yiming's back and said softly, "He hasn't changed." Yi Xian looked at Lian Qian. Lian Qian said softly, "He is actually a pitiful person. He was originally a scholar, but his family was destroyed. It was Master who passed by and saved him. He knelt outside Master's door for 10 days and 10 nights, begging Master to help him take revenge. Master didn't help him take revenge, but taught him how to read and learn the saber. 5 years later, Master brought him to the sect that destroyed his family, and let him make his own choice." Yi Xian asked, "How did he choose?" Lian Qian said softly, "At first, he was afraid, very, very afraid. He was afraid that if he killed his enemies, Master would expel him from the Academy. However, if he didn't take revenge, he wouldn't be satisfied. In the end, he still killed all his enemies. After killing all his enemies, he knelt in front of Master and kowtowed 3 times. Then, he wanted to commit suicide, but Master stopped him. Master said to him, 'A life for a life. This is reason, and he didn't do anything wrong.'" Yi Xian was silent. Lian Qian continued, "From then on, he firmly remembered Master's words. Using reason as a saber, he achieved the unparalleled saber Dao. And he was respectfully called the Saber King." As she said this, she looked at Yi Xian. "You should be glad that it wasn't Wenxiu who came to find you this time. Otherwise, you might have died." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Wenxiu?" Lian Qian said softly, "Among all of Master's disciples, her strength is second only to the headmaster. She doesn't like to study, but she likes to play with the spear. Her spear skills are unparalleled. In the Academy, except for Master, she isn't afraid of anyone. In the past, she fought with eldest sister countless times. She is extremely powerful, and people call her the godly spear Zhang Wenxiu." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Miss Lian Qian, don't scare me." Lian Qian shook her head. When Master was around, there were many strong people in the Academy. The Academy was really good at that time. Unfortunately, after Master left, many things changed. Do you know? In the beginning, the people who fought for Xiao Ta weren't others, but our Academy's own people. And the reason why the headmaster left was not because he didn't care about the Academy, but because he knew that the hearts of the people in the Academy had changed. He could change the Academy, but he couldn't change the hearts of the people. Saying this, she paused and then continued, "The most changeable thing in the world is the hearts of the people." Yi Xian shook his head. "Looks like I have to work hard." Lian Qian nodded. "You do have to work hard. To open the Universal Library, you need Xiao Ta's cooperation. And since Xiao Ta has already recognized you as his master, the Academy will treat you as the biggest threat." Yi Xian said, "But Xiao Ta isn't with me anymore." Lian Qian shook her head. "They won't believe it. They know Xiao Ta's ability. If he recognizes you as his master, as long as you want, Xiao Ta will definitely return to your side." Yi Xian was speechless. Lian Qian continued, "The Worldwide Academy used to be the #1 power in the 5th dimension. You can't imagine how deep its foundation was. So your top priority now is to become stronger and learn from the sword spirit. Also, you have to increase your realm." Yi Xian nodded. "I understand." Saying this, he looked at the sword spirit. "I'll have to trouble you during this period of time." The sword spirit nodded. "Let's begin." In the following period of time, Yi Xian continued to train with the sword spirit. However, he would also train with Lian Wanli sometimes. Thus, during this period of time, Lian Qian's improvement was very fast. On the side, Lian Qian had a trace of worry on her face. This was because she discovered that the people who had disappeared from the Worldwide Academy had started to appear one by one. She knew that these people wouldn't give up the World Prison Pagoda. Not everyone was like Chen Yiming. Thinking of this, Lian Qian sighed softly. She looked at Yi Xian, who was not far away.
She could only say that everything depended on Yi Xian's luck. In fact, what she was really worried about was if Yi Xian really died at the hands of the Worldwide Academy. This was because once Yi Xian died at the hands of the Worldwide Academy, an enemy would appear in the Worldwide Academy. The woman in the plain dress. Would the woman in the plain dress be afraid of the Worldwide Academy? In her opinion, that woman would not be afraid of anyone. Would anyone in the Worldwide Academy be able to stop this woman? Even if a female teacher appeared, she might not be able to stop her. If Yi Xian died, the Worldwide Academy would be in big trouble. At the Worldwide Academy. After Lu Shidi took over the Worldwide Academy, he immediately started to reorganize the Worldwide Academy. One by one, the experts began to return to the Worldwide Academy. This was because the news that the Great Empress had single-handedly suppressed the Worldwide Academy had spread. Anger. At this moment, the experts of the Worldwide Academy were all furious. When had the Worldwide Academy ever been humiliated like this? Therefore, more and more experts of the Worldwide Academy returned to the Worldwide Academy. In other words, the Worldwide Academy had not been weakened because of the Shura Empress. Instead, it had become stronger and stronger. Because the main library of the Myriad Dimensional Academy had been destroyed, Lu Shidi moved to a library on the right side of the academy. At this moment, almost all the experts of the Worldwide Academy had gathered in the library. Beside Lu Shidi was Lin Xiaoshu. Lu Shidi looked at the crowd and said, "Everyone, since the establishment of the Worldwide Academy, this is the first time we have been humiliated like this." As he spoke, he stood up. "This humiliation must be washed away with blood." Below, an old man suddenly said, "Are we going to start a war with the Shura Hell?" Lu Shidi said calmly, "No, kill Yi Xian first." Chapter 889. They had to kill Yi Xian first. Everyone in the hall was silent. Yi Xian. Hearing this name, everyone's face turned gloomy. Yi Xian was the reason why the Worldwide Academy was bullied by the Empress, and it was also this person who killed many powerful people from the Worldwide Academy. At this time, Lu Shidi said, Xiao Ta originally belonged to the Worldwide Academy, but it was seized by Yi Xian. The Worldwide Academy must take it back. Below, an old man said in a deep voice, "But Yi Xian has Fu Wenzong to protect him." Lu Shidi was expressionless. "So let's kill Fu Wenzong first." Kill Fu Wenzong first. The expressions of everyone in the surroundings changed. Fu Wenzong wasn't a third-rate force. Fu Wenzong was considered a first-rate force. Although it was slightly worse than the Worldwide Academy, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that easy to kill Fu Wenzong. Even if they were killed, they would have to pay a terrible price. As if he knew what everyone was thinking, Lu Shidi suddenly said, "If the Worldwide Academy fought alone, it would naturally be difficult to kill Fu Wenzong, but what if someone helped us?" Someone helped us. In the hall, everyone looked at Lu Shidi. Lu Shidi said softly, "Everyone, get ready and wait for my orders." Soon, everyone in the hall left, leaving only Lu Shidi and Lin Xiaoshu. Lin Xiaoshu said, "Who did you find?" Lu Shidi said, "The corpse clan of Southern Border." Hearing this, Lin Xiaoshu frowned. "You found them?" Lu Shidi said softly, "Only they would be willing to destroy Fu Wenzong at all costs." Lin Xiaoshu asked, "Why?" Lu Shidi said with a smile, "Because the current corpse race's patriarch is the super genius who was chased out by Fu Wenzong back then." Lin Xiaoshu said softly, "It's him. Why did he go to the Southern Border? And he even became the corpse clan's patriarch?" Lu Shidi shook his head. "I don't know. When I was studying abroad, I went to that place. That guy was always thinking about revenge. That's exactly what we wanted." Lin Xiaoshu fell silent for a moment before he said, "According to my knowledge, Xiao Ta doesn't seem to be in Yi Xian's possession anymore." Lu Shidi said, "It's not in his hands, but that Xiao Ta has already recognized him as his master, and that Xiao Ta himself has seized the fortune of heaven and earth. As long as he wants, Xiao Ta will definitely return to his side. Moreover, this pagoda recognized him as its owner. In other words, if he was given the chance, he could open the Universal Library and obtain the treasures within. Therefore he must die." Lin Xiaoshu was silent. Lu Shidi said softly, "Xiaoshu, I know this isn't honorable, but think about it. The academy today isn't the academy of the past. If we don't obtain the treasures left behind by teacher,
How can we fight against the super experts of this world? Or do you want the Worldwide Academy to experience the same situation as before, where life and death are in the hands of others?
Lin Xiaoshu was silent.
It had to be said that he was suppressed by the Shura Empress alone, which made him feel very sullen. When had the Worldwide Academy ever suffered such humiliation? And the reason why it was humiliated was because the Worldwide Academy was currently weak. What the Worldwide Academy used in the past was no longer feasible. Thinking of this, Lin Xiaoshu sighed softly.
Do as you wish.
After saying this, he turned around and left. Inside the hall, Lu Shidi was expressionless and didn't speak for a long time.
Shura hell.
Within a certain dark room, Yi Ling sat silently on a square chair constructed from a pile of bones, and there were two elderly men hovering behind her. And in front of Yi Ling, a Xiao Ta floated. The World Prison Pagoda. The World Prison Pagoda trembled slightly, as if expressing something.
Yi Ling didn't speak.
At this time, an elder behind Yi Ling suddenly said, "Master, this pagoda doesn't seem to reject you."
Yi Ling looked at the World Prison Pagoda.
She naturally knew why this Xiao Ta didn't reject her.
This was his pagoda.
After a moment, Yi Ling suddenly said, "I know you've awakened, give me an answer."
No response. Yi Ling narrowed her eyes.
A powerful pressure suddenly enveloped the World Prison Pagoda. At this time, a voice sounded from inside the pagoda. "I have no grievances with you, sir.
Why must you be so overbearing?"
Yi Ling looked at the World Prison Pagoda. "Give me an answer." The voice said, "Don't worry, sir. I won't seek death by targeting him."
Yi Ling was silent.
Killing intent condensed in her eyes. At this time the voice spoke again. "Sir, I have no malice towards him. If I did, I would have already killed him in the fourth dimension. The reason why I can't leave this pagoda is because of me, not because I don't want to leave." After a moment of silence, Yi Ling pointed with her finger. A black light suddenly entered the World Prison Pagoda. Then she said softly, "Go!" The World Prison Pagoda trembled slightly, turned into a black light and disappeared. At this time, the elder behind Yi Ling suddenly appeared and blocked the World Prison Pagoda. But the World Prison Pagoda directly crashed into him. Boom! The elder retreated several feet. When he stopped, the World Prison Pagoda had already disappeared. The elder looked at Yi Ling. "Master, you," Yi Ling said softly. "What do you want to say?" The elder spoke in a low voice. "Master, this is the key to the Universal Library. With this key you can open that library."
"Master, why did you?"
Yi Ling said, "It's just a library." The elder hesitated for a moment and said, "Master seems to care a lot about that young man, Yi Xian." Yi Ling looked at the elder. The latter's expression changed, and he hurriedly bent down. Yi Ling looked at the elder.
"This person is related to me. The two of you can't touch him. Understand?"
The elder nodded. "Your subordinate understands." Yi Ling slowly closed her eyes. "I'm going into closed-door cultivation for a while, in order to deal with those old geezers down there." The elder's expression instantly became solemn when he heard this. The Azura Hell. This place wasn't called hell for nothing.
Yi Ling's face was emotionless.
She suddenly looked at her right hand, and there was a small wooden figure there. The two elders behind her didn't dare say anything and left silently. High up in the clouds, Yi Xian, who was sparring with Lian Wanli, suddenly stopped and looked up into the sky. A black dot was flying over from there, and it didn't take long for the pagoda of prison to appear in front of Yi Xian.
"I'm back." Yi Xian was stunned.
Meanwhile, the pagoda of prison directly entered Yi Xian's chest. Yi Xian blinked. What's going on? Why did Xiao Ta fly back by himself? Yi Xian opened his palm, and the pagoda of prison appeared within it. The pagoda of prison trembled violently as if it was trying to express something. Yi Xian chuckled lightly and said, "All right, I won't make you go out and attract firepower in the future." The pagoda of prison flickered on the spot, and then it transformed into a ray of black light that entered Yi Xian's body. The pagoda of prison.
Yi Xian smiled slightly.
Actually, after spending so much time with the pagoda of prison, he still had feelings for it. Moreover, the pagoda of prison seemed to be closer to him than before. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian's face suddenly turned ashen. Xiao Ta's return wasn't entirely a good thing. There was still a 9th floor in this pagoda.
I wonder if this guy is easy to talk to. Without thinking too much, Yi Xian put away the pagoda of prison.
He looked at Lian Wanli in front of him and said, "Come, continue." As soon as he finished speaking, he directly rushed out.
In the distance, the corner of Lian Wanli's mouth lifted slightly.
He drew his saber and slashed, and the azure dragon roared.
On the side, the sword spirit walked to Lian Qian's side and said softly, "His comprehension isn't particularly high, but he is very hard-working." Lian Qian nodded. If he doesn't have top-notch talent and doesn't work hard, then what hope does he have?
The sword spirit said softly, "Master was also very hard-working back then."
Lian Qian said, "I'm very curious, did he die or?"
The sword spirit said, "His lifespan ended."
Lifespan. Lian Qian was silent.
There were many strong people in this world, and most of them died because their lifespan ended.
Who could not die?
Even the most powerful person would have a day when their lifespan ended.
Could anyone live forever?
She didn't know, because she had asked the prophet, but she didn't get an answer. Just like that, after about 5 days, Yi Xian began to cultivate the sword soul. The reason why he cultivated the sword soul was actually to support his sword rule. Moreover, he had the soul-subduing sword, so he couldn't waste the soul-subduing sword's special ability to target the soul. In the following time, Yi Xian began to cultivate his soul crazily.
Time passed day by day.
During this time, the Worldwide Academy was very quiet, and there was no movement.
It was worth mentioning that Chen Tian had left the Worldwide Academy. As for where he went, no one knew.
Fu Wenzong. Inside the Rune Hall, Shen Xinghe's face was gloomy, and beside him was Lu Yong. Shen Xinghe suddenly said, "The Worldwide Academy is too quiet." Lu Yong nodded. "It's very abnormal. I've already asked our people to return to Fu Wenzong." Shen Xinghe said, "What about little Grandmaster?"
Lu Yong said, "We lost contact. However, he should be fine."
Shen Xinghe shook his head. "No, since Lu Shidi has appeared, the other 6 headmasters might also appear. If these people target little Grandmaster, he will be in a very dangerous situation. We have to contact him and ask him to return to Fu Wenzong quickly." Lu Yong nodded, and at this moment, the expressions of the 2 people in the hall suddenly changed. In the next moment, the 2 of them disappeared from the hall. Outside the hall, more than 10 corpses suddenly fell from the sky, accompanied by blood. These corpses landed steadily in front of Lu Yong and Shen Xinghe. They were all Fu Wenzong's people. Seeing this, Shen Xinghe's expression immediately became gloomy. He raised his head to look at the sky, but there was no one there. Lu Yong said softly, "They've made a move." Shen Xinghe said, "How many people are willing to come and help?" Lu Yong said, "The weapon refining sect has already agreed to help us. They'll be here soon." Shen Xinghe asked again, "What else?" Lu Yong said, "There are some aristocratic families, but they don't have many experts. As for those top forces, none of them have expressed their stance. I guess they don't want to get involved in this mess." Shen Xinghe sneered, "When these people usually beg us, they all talk about climbing a mountain of knives and plunging into a sea of flames. Now that I, Fu Wenzong, have something to do, they all play dumb." Lu Yong said softly, "This is how the world works." Shen Xinghe was about to speak, but at this moment, a cloud of black gas suddenly appeared in the distant sky. The next moment, this cloud of black gas directly covered Fu Wenzong. At this moment, Lu Yong's expression changed greatly. "There's poison. Be careful." In the sky, a man suddenly appeared. This person was the current Academy Master of the Worldwide Academy, Lu Shidi. In the sky, Lu Shidi looked down. "If Yi Xian appears, concentrate on killing this person first. If he doesn't appear, then kill Fu Wenzong's people one by one, until he appears. P.S. Sorry brothers, I made a mistake. Recently, I was brought to a healthcare center by a reader, and for a moment, I couldn't control myself and became muddle-headed. My fault. I will definitely control myself in the future. I will definitely not go to an illegal healthcare center. I will send everyone a red packet." Chapter 890. In the mountains, Yi Xian, who was sparring, suddenly stopped. He took out a voice transmission talisman. After a while, he frowned and a cold light flashed in his eyes. At this moment, the sword spirit suddenly said, "What's wrong?" Yi Xian said in a low voice. Something happened to my sect. He did not expect that the Worldwide Academy would besiege Fu Wenzong. They were going to fight to the death. The sword spirit nodded slightly. Are you leaving? Yi Xian nodded and looked at the sword spirit. Miss Sword Spirit, do you want to go together? The sword spirit shook her head. I won't leave this place. Yi Xian hesitated and was about to speak when the sword spirit said, This is my home. Don't say anything more. Yi Xian was silent. At this moment, Lian Qian's voice suddenly sounded in his mind. She won't leave. Master wanted to take her away, but she didn't want to leave. Yi Xian looked at the blind swordsman not far away and said softly, Miss Sword Spirit, are you going to keep watching over him? The sword spirit smiled. This is my home. Yi Xian sighed and did not try to persuade her. He bowed slightly and said, Miss Sword Spirit, I'll come back to you after I've settled my matters. The sword spirit nodded. Sure. Yi Xian smiled. See you later. After saying that, he flew up on his sword and disappeared into the sky in the blink of an eye. The sword spirit was silent for a while. Then she turned and left. After a while, she picked a large bouquet of flowers and placed them in the pool, letting them drift with the water. Looking at the petals floating on the water, the sword spirit's eyes gradually became infatuated. Fu Wenzong. At this moment, above Fu Wenzong, there was a black cloud layer. Within that black cloud layer, there were countless powerful auras. Down below, Shen Xinghe looked up at Lu Shidi, who was in the air. So it's Master Lu. In the air, Lu Shidi looked down at Shen Xinghe and said, You, Fu Wenzong, have never offended our Worldwide Academy. You, Fu Wenzong, brought this upon yourself. You can't blame anyone else. Shen Xinghe smiled and said, Estate Head Lu, it was clearly your Worldwide Academy that coveted my little Grandmaster's World Prison Pagoda. What, you want to be a whore and also want to erect a chastity memorial arch? Lu Shidi chuckled. I hope Sect Master Shen can still talk later. As he spoke, he looked at the opposite side. Why? You're not coming out to meet your martial nephew? A middle-aged man walked out from the black clouds in the distance. Upon seeing this middle-aged man, Shen Xinghe's face instantly darkened. Yan Tian, it's you. Yan Tian. Hearing this name, the expressions of some of the Fu Wenzong experts changed. Yan Tian was a famous genius of Fu Wenzong in the past. Moreover, he was also Shen Xinghe's martial uncle. However, for some unknown reason, he was directly expelled from Fu Wenzong by the previous Fu Wenzong sect master. One must know that according to seniority, Yan Tian should have been the sect master back then. Shen Xinghe glared at Yan Tian. You still have the face to return. Yan Tian smiled. What? You don't welcome your martial uncle? Shen Xinghe sneered. Martial uncle? You were expelled from the sect and you still have the face to call yourself my martial uncle? Did you eat too much shit? In the air, Yan Tian narrowed his eyes. My good martial nephew, after so many years, your ability to talk has become even better. As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his right hand and a dozen experts wrapped in black clothes suddenly flew out from the black clouds. Seeing this, Shen Xinghe's expression changed. Southern Borders Celestial Corpses. Defend! As soon as Shen Xinghe's voice fell, a few Fu Wenzong experts suddenly appeared in the surroundings. Instead of charging forward, they each took out a powerful orange talisman. Orange talismans shot into the sky and engulfed the celestial corpses in the air. At this moment, a giant celestial corpses suddenly flew down from the black clouds. The celestial corpses held a giant axe in his hand and he swung it down from the sky. The powerful force tore through the power of the talismans and his target was Shen Xinghe. Shen Xinghe remained expressionless. He opened his palm and a perfect orange talisman shot into the sky. The orange talisman turned into a bolt of divine lightning and struck the celestial corpses. Boom! Countless bolts of lightning exploded in the sky. However, the celestial corpses were unharmed. Shen Xinghe's expression sank when he saw this. Impossible! Haha! Not far away, Yan Tian suddenly burst into laughter. My good junior nephew, are you surprised? I've specially refined these celestial corpses to deal with your talismans. It looks like they're quite effective. As soon as he finished speaking, he gently pressed his right hand down and the giant celestial corpses charged down from the sky. The orange talismans were completely ineffective against it. Shen Xinghe's expression turned ugly when he saw this. In the sky, Yan Tian suddenly laughed and said, "My good junior nephew, there are many surprises waiting for you." As soon as he finished speaking, he gently clapped his hands. 3 more giant celestial corpses appeared from the black clouds behind him. Soon, 4 celestial corpses charged down from the sky. Fu Wanzong's talismans were completely ineffective against the celestial corpses. The expressions of the Fu Wanzong experts turned extremely ugly when they saw this. Talismans were their forte. If their talismans were ineffective against them, it would be as good as cutting off their own arms. It was not that Fu Wanzong did not have other experts who did not rely on talismans, but there were very few of them. At this moment, the sound of a sword suddenly rang out in the distance. In the sky, Lu Shidi frowned and looked into the distance. In the next moment, he suddenly retracted his gaze and looked down. There, 2 celestial corpses had been sent flying. The one who had attacked them was not Yi Xian but a little girl. Xueqi. Xueqi looked at the other 2 celestial corpses. She pointed with her finger and a ray of sword light slashed out. Boom! The ray of sword light slashed one of the celestial corpses. The celestial corpses retreated rapidly with a deep sword wound on their bodies. Seeing that something had happened to Xueqi, Shen Xinghe immediately heaved a sigh of relief. He turned to look at Lu Yong who was beside him. Don't use the talismans on these corpses. Use them on the experts from the Worldwide Academy. Also, tell everyone not to hold back. Use the talismans to smash them to death. Lu Yong nodded. He turned to look at the surroundings and shouted angrily, "Don't hold back, smash them." As soon as he finished speaking, countless talismans flew into the sky from within Fu Wanzong's body. These talismans were all orange in color. It could be said that only Fu Wanzong would be able to take out such a large amount of talismans. Other sects, even the Worldwide Academy, would not use orange talismans like this. It was simply a waste. Only Fu Wanzong would dare to do this. Countless orange talismans flew into the sky. Their power was simply terrifying. In the sky, Lu Shidi's expression also became gloomy at this moment. This was because the experts from Fu Wanzong and the people brought by Yan Tian were being forced to retreat. The orange talismans alone were not particularly terrifying, but if so many of them were gathered together, it would be truly frightening. In the sky, explosions sounded continuously. The entire sky was filled with either wind or thunder. If it wasn't thunder, then it was fire. In any case, all kinds of chaotic energy gathered together, forming a huge hodgepodge. Lu Shidi looked around and frowned. Where was this Yi Xian? Actually, he had always been on guard against Yi Xian. This was because he knew that Yi Xian was extremely good at concealment and assassination. Therefore, he had not dared to let the true experts from the Worldwide Academy attack. Lin Xiaoshu was also secretly waiting for an opportunity. As long as Yi Xian appeared, all the forces would instantly focus on Yi Xian. However, Yi Xian did not appear. What was going on? Lu Shidi's right hand gripped the flute tightly. He felt that something was wrong. At this moment, not far away, Yan Tian suddenly said angrily, "Brother Lu, why aren't you letting the experts from the Worldwide Academy attack?" At this moment, more than 50 of the god corpses that he brought with him had already fallen. Although the 4 super god corpses were not affected by the talismans, they were being blocked by Xueqi alone. If this went on, he would suffer heavy losses. At this moment, Lu Shidi suddenly said, "Brother Yan, as far as I know, you still have a few more blood corpses." Hearing this, Yan Tian narrowed his eyes, and a cold light flickered in his eyes. "Brother Lu, what's wrong? We're attacking Fu Wanzong together, but you don't want to do anything?" Lu Shidi shook his head. "Of course not, Brother Yan. The most terrifying thing about Fu Wanzong right now isn't this Shen Xinghe or that little girl with the sword. It's that Yi Xian. If we don't guard against him, we'll pay a terrible price." Yan Tian said in a low voice, "Lu Shidi, I'm not going to argue with you. I only have one question. Are your people going to attack or not? If not, the old man will turn around and leave right now." Lu Shidi frowned. "Brother Yan, don't you know how terrifying Yi Xian is?" Yan Tian said fiercely, "I only know that my people are dying one after another." "Lu Shidi, are you trying to let all my people die so that you can take advantage of the situation?" Lu Shidi was about to speak when Yan Tian suddenly roared furiously,
Are you going to attack or not? Lu Shidi glanced at Yan Tian and said, Attack! As soon as he finished speaking, a few old men suddenly appeared behind him, and they charged down. Even though there were only 4 of them, their strengths were extremely formidable, and they directly destroyed a huge expanse of talisman energy. Coupled with Yan Tian's super god corpses, they seemed to be on the verge of a counterattack. On the other hand, Lu Shidi grew even more vigilant. He didn't dare underestimate Yi Xian because the Worldwide Academy had paid a terrible price for underestimating Yi Xian. Moreover, he knew that Yi Xian was extremely skilled in concealment and assassination. Yi Xian didn't draw his sword, but once he did, his enemies would definitely die. However, Yi Xian still hadn't appeared. Below, Shen Xinghe and the others were still madly activating the orange talismans. These orange talismans were like paper. Under the situation where Shen Xinghe and the others were madly activating the orange talismans, Yan Tian's side was once again at a disadvantage. Yan Tian looked at Lu Shidi and was about to speak. Right at this moment, the space in front of Lu Shidi suddenly trembled. In the next moment, his expression changed greatly. He's gone to the academy. Not good. His target is the worldwide bookstore. Let's go back to the academy. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and directly disappeared into the horizon. Chapter 891. At that moment, Lu Shidi was shocked. He finally knew why Yi Xian didn't appear. It wasn't that Yi Xian didn't appear but that he had gone to the Worldwide Academy. Now that there was no one at the Worldwide Academy, who could stop Yi Xian? More importantly, the Worldwide Bookroom was at the Worldwide Academy. If Yi Xian had the key to the prison tower, he might be able to open the Worldwide Bookroom. Once it fell into Yi Xian's hands, Lu Shidi didn't dare to think about it. At that moment, all the Worldwide Academy experts rushed back to the Worldwide Academy. Yan Tian, on the other hand, was dumbfounded. They ran just like that? Below, Seven suddenly said. Leave them here. The moment she said this, she tapped the ground and turned into a sword light that charged into the sky. When he saw that, Yan Tian's expression changed. Retreat! Very quickly, everyone retreated. Fu Wanzong naturally wouldn't give up this chance and chased after them. One had to say that Fu Wanzong's fighting was really interesting. He just smashed talismans like crazy. He was just so rich. However, Yan Tian and the others fled really quickly and Fu Wanzong and the others weren't able to stop all of them. In the sky, Lu Yong suddenly said, We can't chase them. Head to the Worldwide Academy. When she heard Lu Yong's words, Seven stopped. Lu Yong said, Little Ancestor has headed to the Worldwide Academy and is in danger. We have to rush to the Worldwide Academy. Seven nodded. Let's go. The moment she said this, she turned into a sword light and disappeared into the horizon. Lu Yong suddenly said, Bring all the talismans. Take out all that Fu Wanzong has accumulated. If Little Ancestor is in danger, then blow up the Worldwide Academy. Very quickly, all the experts from Fu Wanzong rushed to the Worldwide Academy. The entire sect was out. At that moment, numerous people were shocked. Fu Wanzong was risking his life. Worldwide Academy. Under Lian Qian's instructions, Yi Xian quietly arrived at the Worldwide Academy. After he entered a grand hall, he walked along the secret Dao Yi path in the grand hall. He used the immeasurable sword, so no one noticed him along the way. However, when he reached a door at the end of the secret passage, a mirror on the wall suddenly shone on him. Yi Xian's expression immediately changed. He knew that he had been discovered. Yi Xian casually waved his hand and put the mirror away. Then, he sped up and quickly passed through the door. Not far behind the door sat an old man. The old man wore a loose robe and had a long beard. He supported himself with a walking stick and just sat there quietly without any signs of life. On either side of him were rows of bookshelves. On the bookshelves were all sorts of ancient texts. Behind the old man was a door of light. Above the door of light was the seal of a tower. Yi Xian glanced at it. It was the same seal as the one in the prison pagoda. Clearly, behind this door was the legendary world-dimensional bookhouse. Then, who was this old man in front of him? Yi Xian asked in his heart, Miss Lian Qian. Lian Qian said in a deep voice, I don't know this person. Yi Xian glanced at the old man. Do you think he will hit me? Lian Qian said, You can try. Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. Boom! An explosion suddenly sounded. The next moment, Yi Xian returned to his original position.
And the old man was still sitting there.
Where he stood, Yi Xian's expression turned ugly.
This old man's strength was unfathomable. At this moment, Lian Qian suddenly said, "Retreat."
Without any hesitation, Yi Xian turned and left.
Because he had been discovered.
He knew that if he stayed here, he would definitely die when the experts from the Worldwide Academy rushed back. He couldn't be greedy.
And the old man didn't chase after him.
Soon, Yi Xian arrived outside.
At this moment, he sensed countless powerful auras in the distant sky.
Yi Xian didn't hesitate and was about to flee. At this moment, an angry shout suddenly resounded from above the clouds. "Where do you think you're going?" As soon as the voice finished speaking, an ancient book suddenly flew down from the sky. The next moment, a resplendent white light erupted from the ancient book. This white light enveloped the entire Worldwide Academy and shone on where Yi Xian was. And the space he was in started to tremble violently. At the same time, dozens of powerful auras enveloped him. Yi Xian's expression sank.
He had been discovered.
He had just woken up and was about to use the teleportation talisman when a mysterious force suddenly appeared in the surrounding space. This force directly suppressed the space he was in. Just as he was about to use the spatial Tao law, Xueqi and the others appeared in front of him. Along with them were dozens of super experts from the Worldwide Academy. These people surrounded Yi Xian tightly. Yi Xian asked in his heart, "Miss Lian Qian, what should we do?"
Lian Qian said, "Surrender."
Yi Xian was speechless.
Lian Qian added, "Perhaps you can reason with them."
Yi Xian thought for a moment and felt that this method was feasible.
He was about to speak when Xueqi suddenly said, "Kill him.
Don't hold back. Everyone, attack together."
As soon as he finished speaking, the flute in his hand suddenly transformed into a green ray of light that shot explosively towards Yi Xian.
Lin Xiaoshu, who was next to him, also suddenly made a move. He opened his palm, and a thick book appeared in his palm. In the next moment, the ancient book suddenly flipped open, and pages flew out. These pages were like blades that flew towards Yi Xian. One blade after another. Extremely sharp. Meanwhile, the surrounding experts from the Worldwide Academy attacked as well. Yi Xian was stunned. They didn't even give him a chance to speak. He naturally couldn't resist so many people attacking at the same time. However, at this moment, he had to resist even if he couldn't. Yi Xian's body suddenly ignited. It wasn't soul ignition, but he had devoured a drop of ancestral heavenly dragon blood, strengthening his body. When the dragon blood entered his body, Yi Xian's body underwent an earth-shattering change.
Scales suddenly appeared all over his body.
At this moment, Yi Xian felt like his entire body was filled with boundless energy, but it still wasn't enough. So, he immediately circulated the energy of the earth, and it instantly converged throughout his body. Yi Xian suddenly drew his sword and swung it forward. Bang! A world-shaking explosion suddenly resounded. Yi Xian retreated madly, and the scales throughout his body actually started to crack inch by inch. When he was 3 kilometers away, all the scales on his body had fallen off, and then his body started to crack apart. When he finally stopped moving, countless rifts had appeared all over his body, and some of the rifts were so deep that even his internal organs could be seen. Even though he'd survived it, he was in an extremely terrible state. His entire body had changed beyond recognition, and he didn't seem like a human anymore. However, the expressions of Xueqi and the others grew even more solemn. Yi Xian had actually resisted their joint attack. Was that normal? Of course it wasn't. Xueqi stared fixedly at Yi Xian. At this moment, he finally understood why Chen Tian had been constantly targeting Yi Xian. If Yi Xian was allowed to grow, then he would definitely become a huge threat to the academy. He was truly too monstrous. Xueqi was just about to attack again when a group of experts suddenly rushed over from afar. It was Shen Xinghe, Fu Wenzong, and the other experts. Shen Xinghe instantly heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Yi Xian was still alive. He'd been afraid that he would be too late. Fortunately, Yi Xian was still alive. Xueqi gazed at Yi Xian from afar, and the killing intent in his eyes wasn't concealed at all. Meanwhile, Shen Xinghe spoke abruptly, "Young martial ancestor, you leave first." Leave first? Yi Xian shook his head. He knew that the Worldwide Academy wouldn't let them leave today. Yi Xian took out a bottle of life spring water and drank it. Soon, his body began to recover at an extremely fast speed. Meanwhile, rays of white light suddenly shot into the sky from all around the Worldwide Academy. The white light formed a huge light shield that enveloped the surroundings, and more experts from the Worldwide Academy appeared in the surroundings. Obviously, they didn't intend to let Yi Xian and the others leave. Below, Shen Xinghe's face was expressionless.
Young martial ancestor, you leave first.
Lu Yong wanted to say something but hesitated. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, Old Shen, don't even think about leaving. Shen Xinghe looked at Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian had recovered about 50% to 60%. Yi Xian smiled and said, They won't let us leave. We only have a single choice now, and it's to fight them to the death. Lu Yong nodded, just as young martial ancestor said, We have no way out now. If we lose this battle, then I, Fu Wenzong, will vanish from this world, and I won't have any chance to make a comeback. So we can only fight. As he spoke, he gazed at Yi Xian. Young martial ancestor, can you still fight? Yi Xian smiled. Of course. As soon as he finished speaking, he withdrew another drop of ancestral heavenly dragon's blood and drank it. In next to no time, a strand of formidable energy converged within his entire body. This energy was intoxicating. Yi Xian slowly clenched his right fist. He raised his head to look at Lu Shidi, and then he grinned. Dean Lu, do you dare to fight me? A declaration of war. Everyone looked at Yi Xian when they heard this. Yi Xian intends to challenge Lu Shidi? In midair, Lu Shidi gazed at Yi Xian. He was slightly surprised because he hadn't expected that Yi Xian would challenge him. In all fairness, Yi Xian was absolutely not a match for him. Regardless of whether it was combat experience or cultivation, Yi Xian was absolutely not a match for him. However, Yi Xian had done it. There's something fishy going on. Lu Shidi shook his head and smiled. All right. He knew that there was something fishy going on, but he still accepted the challenge. It was a problem of morale. If he didn't fight, then it would severely affect their morale. Moreover, why would he have to fear Yi Xian? In midair, Lu Shidi walked slowly towards Yi Xian, and he grinned. Yi Xian, I'm very curious about exactly how. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly vanished. In the blink of an eye, a blood-red prisoner character suddenly appeared above Lu Shidi, and then a strand of formidable energy instantly enveloped Lu Shidi. At the same time, a ray of light suddenly arrived in front of Lu Shidi, and another formidable energy enveloped Lu Shidi as soon as it arrived. The sword domain. At the instant that the sword domain appeared, Lu Shidi's expression finally changed. At this moment, he sensed the aura of death. Right at this moment, Lin Xiaoshu suddenly attacked. He tossed out an ancient book and smashed it against the blood-red prisoner character. Bang! The prisoner character trembled violently, and it was at this moment that Lu Shidi was blasted 300 m away. However, he'd lost his right hand. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned. Meanwhile, Yi Xian glanced at Lin Xiaoshu and Lu Shidi, and then he spat, Tui. Shameless. Everyone was speechless. P.S. Have any readers gone on a blind date? What should I pay attention to when going on a blind date? Besides that, what should I tell them if they ask about my income? Should I tell them the truth or exaggerate a little? Chapter 892. At that moment, the faces of the Worldwide Academy powerhouses in the field were a little ugly. They had agreed on a one-on-one fight, but Lin Xiaoshu had suddenly attacked. That was really a little disgraceful. Lin Xiaoshu was silent. He also knew that it was disgraceful to do so, but he had to attack just now because if he hadn't, Lu Shidi might have died. Lu Shidi's strength was far superior to Yi Xian's, and he was caught off guard by Yi Xian. If he was killed just like that, it wouldn't be worth it. Therefore he attacked. In the distance, Lu Shidi's face was frighteningly gloomy at that moment. He really didn't expect that he would almost be killed by Yi Xian. He didn't look down on Yi Xian. On the contrary, he valued Yi Xian very much. However, Yi Xian's sword just now was far beyond his expectations. Yi Xian used several kinds of power in that sword, and each of them could be said to be able to destroy heaven and earth. At that moment, Yi Xian suddenly chuckled and said, Is this the so-called one-on-one fight? As he said that, he glanced at the worldwide academy powerhouses in the field and laughed. This is a one-on-one fight? Haha. In the field, Fu Wenzong and the other powerhouses all had disdainful expressions. Yi Xian's realm was much lower than Lu Shidi's. Even so, the worldwide academy still wanted to fight 2 against 1. This kind of behavior was really despicable. In the air, the expressions of the worldwide academy powerhouses were also extremely ugly to look at. They wanted to fight back, but found that there was no way to do so. Indeed, they were the ones who were being unreasonable. At that moment Lu Shidi, who was not far away, suddenly said, "Yi Xian, I underestimated you." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Since you underestimated me, then the 2 of you can come at me together." Lu Shidi looked at Yi Xian. "I'll lower my realm to fight you, and I'll lower my realm by 1 realm." As soon as he said that, his realm suddenly plummeted. Soon, he directly became a cosmos realm. Lu Shidi looked at Yi Xian. Again. Yi Xian smiled and said, "When you're about to lose, you let someone else do it?" Lu Shidi said, "Don't worry. This time, no one will make a move." Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said, "How about this? For the sake of absolute fairness, we won't utilize our profound energy, divine abilities, or any divine treasures, and we'll compete in basic cultivation." "All right." Lu Shidi was about to speak when Lin Xiaoshu suddenly said, "I'm afraid it's a trap." Yi Xian laughed and said, "I am, haha." Lin Xiaoshu looked at Yi Xian. "Showy and dirty tricks. He's not a good person." Yi Xian asked, "Are you a good person?" Lin Xiaoshu was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly waved his hand and said, "I don't want to fight a war of words with you. It's just a matter of whether you want to fight or not." Lin Xiaoshu was about to speak when Lu Shidi suddenly said, "Xiaoshu, don't interfere." Lin Xiaoshu wanted to speak but hesitated. Lu Shidi smiled and said, "Or in your heart, I'm really not as good as him?" Lin Xiaoshu didn't say anything and retreated to the side. In the distance, Yi Xian opened his palm, and a sword appeared in his hand. This sword wasn't the executing heaven sword, but a very ordinary sword. Lu Shidi opened his palm, and there was a green flute in his hand. "This is an ordinary long bamboo flute." Yi Xian nodded and said, "Then let's start." As he said this, he seemed to think of something and suddenly looked at Shen Xinghe and the others on the right. "Seniors, no matter what happens later, don't do anything. Don't be like others. We, the people of Fu Wenzong, even if we die, we must die with integrity." Hearing Yi Xian's words, the blood of the Fu Wenzong powerhouses in the field suddenly boiled. "Shen Xinghe, this chapter is not finished. Please continue to the next page." Suddenly he laughed and said, "Good job, little grandmaster. We, the Fu Wenzong, are proud of you." After that, he looked at Lu Shidi, who was opposite him. Lu Shidi smiled and said, "Don't worry, no one in the Worldwide Academy will help me." As he said this, he looked at Lin Xiaoshu and said, "I can die, but don't let others look down on the academy." After a moment of silence, Lin Xiaoshu nodded. Lu Shidi looked at Yi Xian and said, "Let's begin." Yi Xian stood with his sword in hand and did not make a move, using silence to stop the enemy. In the distance, Lu Shidi also did not make a move. Because of what happened before, he did not dare to underestimate Yi Xian. This young man before him really had the ability to kill him. Just like that, the 2 of them were in a deadlock. In the distance, Yi Xian suddenly said in his heart, "Miss Lian Qian, this person before me and Chen Yiming are both headmasters, but I feel that this person is not as strong as Chen Yiming." He still remembered that Chen Yiming's strength could be said to completely crush him. Lian Qian said softly, "Firstly, this person before you is not weak. He was careless and did not guard against you, so you killed him when he was least expecting it. If he was prepared, you would not have been able to hurt him. Secondly, among the headmasters, there are strong and weak ones. Chen Yiming's strength is only second to Wen Xiu's among the headmasters. Also, this person before you is not weak. In my opinion, your chances of winning are less than 20%. However, you are sneaky, so I have decided to give you a bonus. You have at least a 40% chance of winning." Sneaky. Yi Xian was speechless. To think that he was such a person in Lian Qian's heart. Without thinking too much, Yi Xian looked at Lu Shidi, who was opposite him.
This battle was going to be a tough one. At this moment, Lu Shidi suddenly walked toward Yi Xian. Seeing this, everyone looked at Lu Shidi. Lu Shidi walked very slowly, as if he was taking a stroll. He walked slowly toward Yi Xian with a calm smile on his face. Not far away, Xueqi frowned slightly. Force. Lu Shidi was using an invisible force to suppress Yi Xian. He wanted to force Yi Xian to make the first move, or crush Yi Xian with his aura. Xueqi looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian naturally knew Lu Shidi's goal, but he did not make a move. Lu Shidi was getting closer and closer to him, forcing him to make a move. Yi Xian still did not make a move. When Lu Shidi was 6 feet away from Yi Xian suddenly walked toward Lu Shidi. He held the sword in his hand calmly. Just like that, the two of them got closer and closer. When they were 5 feet apart, Lu Shidi suddenly smiled. You are really patient. Then let me go first. As soon as he finished speaking, he was about to make a move. But at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly charged forward and slashed at him with his sword. It had to be said that this slash was extremely good, and the timing was very accurate. Unfortunately, in his opinion, this slash was not a threat to him. Under everyone's gaze, Lu Shidi suddenly held his flute and pushed forward. He was confident in his strength. At this moment, the light sword in Yi Xian's hand was suddenly replaced by a heavy iron sword. Boom! As soon as Lu Shidi reacted, he retreated more than 10 feet away. Before he could stop, a flying sword suddenly slashed at him. This was not a sword driven by qi, but a flying sword driven by pure physical strength. Lu Shidi narrowed his eyes and blocked with his flute. Bang! The flying sword was directly blocked. At this moment, Yi Xian had already appeared in front of Lu Shidi. He held the heavy sword with both hands and slashed down. Although he did not use Xian Qi, this slash was still extremely heavy. This chapter is not finished. Please continue to the next page. Physical strength. At this moment, Lu Shidi understood why Yi Xian sealed his Xian Qi to fight with him. It was because Yi Xian's physical body was strong enough. Without thinking too much, Lu Shidi suddenly attacked. Bang! Yi Xian returned to his original position. After he stopped, he waved his hands and the heavy sword and light sword returned to his hands. Yi Xian looked up at Lu Shidi. In that instant, Lu Shidi's attack was faster than his. Lu Shidi looked at Yi Xian. Without any nonsense, he suddenly opened his palm and pointed lightly. Qi! The flute in his hand suddenly turned into a green light and flew out. Although he did not use Xian Qi, the flute's speed was like a bolt of lightning. Faster than his flying sword. In the distance, Yi Xian blocked with his sword. Bang! Yi Xian's arms trembled violently and he retreated. In the process of retreating, Lu Shidi suddenly appeared in front of him. The next moment, Lu Shidi punched at his head. The punch was like thunder. Yi Xian did not dodge the punch. He turned his left wrist and stabbed forward with his sword. This stab was aimed at Lu Shidi's chest. A life for a life. Lu Shidi frowned slightly. He did not expect this. He did not choose to exchange his life with Yi Xian because, in his opinion, his strength crushed Yi Xian. Exchanging his life with Yi Xian was a very stupid thing to do. Lu Shidi retracted his hand and pressed down. Bang! Yi Xian's sword was pressed to the ground, and at this moment, Yi Xian's body suddenly collided with him. Lu Shidi blocked with his left hand. Bang! With an explosion, Lu Shidi took a few steps back. At this moment, a heavy sword slashed down from above his head. The sword fell, and the sound of air being torn resounded. At this moment, Lu Shidi gently moved his fingers and a green light suddenly blasted at Yi Xian's chest. Bang! Yi Xian was directly sent flying. The moment he flew out, Lu Shidi, who was in the distance, suddenly took a quick step forward. With this step, he came directly in front of Yi Xian and punched Yi Xian's face. Yi Xian almost instinctively slashed forward with his sword. The fist and the sword collided. Bang! Yi Xian retreated again, and as soon as he stopped, a green light was already in front of him. It was that flute again. Yi Xian took a small step back with his sword in hand. Then he thrust his sword forward. This thrust directly stabbed the flute. Bang! Yi Xian's iron sword cracked, and at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. Almost at the same time, the light sword in Yi Xian's hand was replaced by a heavy sword. He held the sword with both hands and slashed. Bang! With a muffled sound, a figure retreated more than 10 feet away. It was Lu Shidi. As soon as Lu Shidi stopped, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of him, and Yi Xian slashed down with his sword. Right at this moment, a sudden change occurred. A powerful force suddenly swept out from Lu Shidi's body, and this force instantly enveloped Yi Xian. At the sight of this, the expressions of Fu Wanzong and the other experts changed drastically. Lu Shidi utilized his profound energy. Not far away, Yi Xian hadn't even reacted when the sword in his hand was seized by Lu Shidi. Then, Lu Shidi took the opportunity to stab his sword into Yi Xian's abdomen, and he grinned. Are you surprised? Are you surprised? End of this chapter. Chapter 893. The eyes of Shen Xinghe and the others almost split open when they saw Lu Shidi stab his sword into Yi Xian's stomach. On the other hand, the experts of the Worldwide Academy were stunned as well. They hadn't expected that Lu Shidi would suddenly utilize profound energy. Even Lin Xiaoshu hadn't expected Lu Shidi to suddenly do that. Doing so was dishonorable. But it was good because they could directly deal with Yi Xian and eliminate a huge problem for the academy. In the distance, Lu Shidi started laughing when he stabbed Yi Xian's sword into Yi Xian's stomach. A fair duel? In his opinion, there was no such thing as fairness in this world. Even when his teacher was still alive, there was no such thing as absolute fairness. The victor was king. That was the eternal truth of this world. So long as Yi Xian died and Fu Wanzong was destroyed, then everyone would forget about Yi Xian and Fu Wanzong in less than a month. History would only remember the victor. Right at this moment, his expression changed drastically because Yi Xian had suddenly grinned, and then a sword was stabbed into the center of Lu Shidi's forehead. The soul-suppressing sword. The soul-suppressing sword had suppressed Lu Shidi's soul. This sudden and unexpected event shocked everyone here. Lin Xiaoshu was about to attack when a huge amount of talismans covered the heavens and the earth as they surged towards him. The experts of the Worldwide Academy attacked in succession. However, Fu Wanzong's group didn't stand by idly and charged forward. In front of Yi Xian, Lu Shidi looked at Yi Xian in shock. You! Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly withdrew the executing heaven sword, and then he swung it swiftly. Lu Shidi's head flew into the air. His body was destroyed. On the other hand, the soul-suppressing sword had directly absorbed Lu Shidi's soul. Yi Xian was expressionless. He hated nonsense the most. The more nonsense there was, the more unforeseen events would occur. If he continued to talk nonsense with Lu Shidi, what if other experts from the Worldwide Academy came to save him? At that time he would cry. Therefore it was better to kill him first. Actually, if Lu Shidi didn't play dirty tricks, he really couldn't beat him. Although his heavy sword and light sword were strong, Lu Shidi's realm was too high, and his battle awareness was even stronger than his. Therefore if they fought normally, he had no hope of winning. However, he did not expect that Lu Shidi would go back on his word again. He did not expect that Lu Shidi would use his sword to kill him. Lu Shidi did not underestimate him at first, but the moment he was stabbed, Lu Shidi relaxed. Because Lu Shidi thought that the outcome was already set. And this moment was Yi Xian's chance. After the soul-suppressing sword absorbed Lu Shidi's soul, its aura suddenly skyrocketed. It was going to evolve. Yi Xian was delighted. He hurriedly put the soul-suppressing sword into the prison pagoda, and then he looked at Lin Xiaoshu who was not far away. At this moment, the one fighting Lin Xiaoshu was Xueqi, and only Xueqi could barely hold back Lin Xiaoshu. Yi Xian stomped his right foot. Chi! A ray of sword light tore through the field. Boundless sword. In the distance, Lin Xiaoshu's expression suddenly changed. He suddenly turned around, and a ray of sword light had already arrived between his eyebrows. The sword had entered half an inch. At this moment of life and death, an illusory ancient book suddenly appeared above Lin Xiaoshu's head. Boom! Yi Xian and Xueqi were directly sent flying by a powerful force. After Yi Xian stopped, he looked at Lin Xiaoshu. At this moment, Lin Xiaoshu was wrapped in a golden light. At this moment, Lian Qian's voice rang in Yi Xian's mind. The Book of Holy Words was given to him by Master in the past. This book is a defensive treasure, and with the protection of the Holy Words, your sword won't be able to break it. Yi Xian was silent. Damn, this Worldwide Academy had too many treasures. As if he had thought of something, he suddenly opened his palm, and the executing heaven sword flew in front of Xueqi. You use this sword.
Xueqi looked at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian said, You hold him back, I will kill the others.
Xueqi nodded. Okay.
After saying that, she held the executing heaven sword and charged out.
Wang. The sound of the sword rang out, shaking the sky.
One had to admit that Xueqi was really strong. It could be said that if Yi Xian didn't use those messy external items, he might not be able to defeat Xueqi. After Xueqi held Lin Xiaoshu back, Yi Xian charged towards the experts from the Worldwide Academy. With his current strength, how could these experts from the Worldwide Academy be a match for him?
Instant kill.
When Yi Xian's sword passed, heads would fall to the ground.
Stop, Yi Xian.
At this moment, Lin Xiaoshu's voice rang out in the sky. Very quickly, some experts from the Worldwide Academy rushed towards Yi Xian, but at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. Boundless sword. The experts from the Worldwide Academy glanced at each other. Where's Yi Xian? Suddenly, a shrill cry resounded from behind them.
All of them turned around, and they saw a man's head flying into the air.
However, Yi Xian still hadn't shown himself. The experts from the Worldwide Academy were horrified when they witnessed this scene. Xueqi was suddenly blasted away. Lin Xiaoshu looked down, and then he opened his palm, and the Book of Holy Wisdom appeared in his hand. Meanwhile, a ray of light slashed towards him from the right. Yi Xian. This time, Yi Xian's target wasn't anyone else but him. Up until now, Lin Xiaoshu was the strongest fighter in the Worldwide Academy. If he could deal with Lin Xiaoshu, then the rest would be nothing to worry about.
However, his sword slashed directly against the golden light emanated by the Book of Holy Wisdom. Bang!
Yi Xian was blasted flying again. When he stopped moving, Xueqi walked over to Yi Xian's side and spoke softly, He's invincible with that thing. Yi Xian glanced at the surroundings. At this moment, Fu Wanzong and the experts from the Worldwide Academy were locked in battle. Fu Wanzong's individual combat strength was inferior to the experts from the Worldwide Academy. However, Fu Wanzong had talismans, and they'd made up for this gap. Meanwhile, Lin Xiaoshu suddenly said, Get out of the formation.
A formation.
Lin Xiaoshu had just descended when an ancient golden book suddenly shot into the sky from below.
Bang!
The entire sky was covered by an expanse of golden light, and it didn't take long for countless golden ancient characters to appear in the surroundings. These ancient characters floated about in the surroundings, and every single one of them emanated extremely formidable energy. Fu Wanzong and the other experts hurriedly retreated when they witnessed this scene, and then they gathered together and withdrew all sorts of formidable defensive talismans. Meanwhile, Lu Yong suddenly appeared by Yi Xian's side, and he spoke in a low voice, Young martial ancestor, we have to leave this sect. Otherwise, we'll forever be in a passive position. Leave Fu Wanzong. Yi Xian glanced at the surroundings.
It's quite difficult to leave now. Lu Yong asked. Do you have a way?
Yi Xian replied, Leave if you have the chance later. Don't pay attention to me and Xueqi. Understand? Lu Yong hesitated to speak, but Yi Xian spoke softly, All of you leave. I'll be able to protect myself.
Lu Yong nodded. All right.
Yi Xian looked up into the sky. The golden characters were growing in number, and strands of formidable energy were appearing incessantly in the surroundings. In midair, Lin Xiaoshu suddenly pressed down lightly with his right hand, and it didn't take long for the golden characters to start trembling violently. A short moment later, countless golden characters suddenly descended from the sky. The expressions of Shen Xinghe and the others instantly changed when they witnessed this scene. The consequences would be unimaginable if they were allowed to descend. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly floated into the air. He opened his palm, and a long brush suddenly appeared in his hand. Lin Xiaoshu, who was hovering in the air, immediately paled at the sight of this long brush. The Heaven Condemnation Brush. Yi Xian grinned, and then he waved the brush. In an instant, an enormous brush shield suddenly appeared above him. Fu Wanzong, and the other experts, and the ancient characters in the sky smashed against the brush shield. Rumble! Numerous explosions resounded incessantly in the surroundings. On the other hand, Yi Xian's countenance instantly turned pale. He hurriedly withdrew a bottle of life spring water and gulped it down. Meanwhile, Shen Xinghe suddenly said, Give him a healing talisman. As soon as he finished speaking, A few dozen orange healing talismans suddenly flew towards Yi Xian. Bang! 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 Beams of emerald green light burst out of Yi Xian's body. Yi Xian was speechless. The golden characters in midair were completely blocked by Yi Xian's heaven-punishing brush. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly grinned, and then he suddenly pointed his brush towards the sky. Attack! As soon as he spoke, the enormous brush shield suddenly trembled violently, and then countless golden characters suddenly shot out from within it. Copy! Not only could this brush attack and defend, but it could also copy. When he saw the countless ancient characters rushing towards him, Lin Xiaoshu's face instantly darkened. He naturally recognized this heaven-punishing brush. It was also the treasure of the Worldwide Academy. Yi Xian took the treasure of the Worldwide Academy and used it to attack the Worldwide Academy. Without much time to think, Lin Xiaoshu suddenly took a step forward. He waved his right hand, and the Book of Holy Divinity suddenly flew out. In the next moment, rays of golden light poured down from the sky like a waterfall. Rumble! In an instant, the entire sky began to tremble violently, and countless waves of air rippled in all directions. And at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm, and a mirror appeared in his hand. He silently recited an incantation, and the next moment, the space in the sky suddenly began to overlap. Myriad-dimensional realm. Seeing this mirror, Lin Xiaoshu's face turned even uglier. How many treasures of the Worldwide Academy did Yi Xian have? He didn't have much time to think, because the myriad-dimensional mirror was a group attack treasure, and ordinary disciples of the Academy couldn't block it at all. Lin Xiaoshu raised his hands, and the overlapping space in the surroundings suddenly began to slowly return to its original state. And at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly soared into the sky. He didn't attack Lin Xiaoshu, but instead slashed towards the right. Bang! The light screen that was covered with golden characters was directly slashed apart by his sword. Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Let's go." Lu Yong immediately roared, "Let's go." Soon, he and Shen Xinghe led the many Fu Wenzong experts and flew towards the horizon. Yi Xian looked at Xueqi, and Xueqi nodded. Yi Xian stomped his right foot, and turned into a ray of sword light that soared into the sky. Xueqi also followed closely behind. And at this moment, there was a sudden change. Below, a powerful force suddenly soared into the sky. Xueqi, who was behind Yi Xian, sensed the danger and immediately turned around to slash. Bang! The ray of sword light shattered, and a powerful force directly swept Xueqi downwards. Yi Xian, who had already disappeared into the horizon, suddenly stopped. Without the slightest hesitation, he directly turned around and rushed into the Worldwide Academy. P.S. Recruit a walk-on, a very interesting walk-on, leave your name. Chapter 894. Yi Xian had just rushed back to the Worldwide Academy when the sound of a sword rang in front of him. Then, a figure retreated in front of him. This person was Xueqi. At this moment, Xueqi's mouth was stained with blood and his expression was extremely solemn. Yi Xian raised his head and looked not far away. There stood an old man. It was this old man who had attacked just now. It's him. At this moment, Lian Qian's voice suddenly rang in Yi Xian's mind. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Who? Lian Qian said in a low voice, Hanji. Back then, the head hierarch of the Academy's Wu Yuan was in charge of teaching martial arts to all Wu Yuan students. He was not one of the 6 hierarchs, but his strength was no weaker than them. Yi Xian was silent. At this moment, Xueqi suddenly said, "Be careful." Yi Xian nodded and looked up at the sky. Fu Wenzong and the other powerhouses had already retreated. He did not ask Shen Xinghe and the others to come over because it was too disadvantageous for them to fight in the Worldwide Academy. In the sky, Shen Xinghe looked in the direction of the Worldwide Academy below. "Go and get that thing." Lu Yong was shocked. "Senior brother. That thing is my, Fu Wenzong's, last resort." Shen Xinghe looked at Lu Yong. "Is the person more important or that thing?" Lu Yong did not say anything else and immediately turned to leave. As Shen Xinghe had said, nothing was more important than Yi Xian. He had to protect Yi Xian at all costs. Worldwide Academy. Hanji, who stood before Yi Xian and Xueqi, spoke abruptly in a light voice. "I never imagined that the day would come when my Myriad Dimension Academy would fall to such a state. Someone actually attacked our academy. How shameful."
Lin Xiaoshu walked to Han Ji's side and said calmly, "We cannot escape the blame for falling to such a state." Han Ji nodded. "Yes." With that, he looked at Yi Xian. "I've heard of you. It's said that you have the treasure of the worldwide academy." Yi Xian grinned. He opened his palm and the prison pagoda appeared in his hand. "It's in my hands. Do you want it?" Han Ji looked at Yi Xian. "You're very confident. He is also very arrogant." Yi Xian laughed. "I'll fight even if I'm confident. I'll still fight even if I'm not confident. Why shouldn't I be more arrogant?" Han Ji nodded. "Lu Shidi died in your hands, which proves that you have strength. Come, let me see how strong you are." As soon as he finished speaking, he stomped his right foot. Boom! The space in front of Yi Xian suddenly shattered. Yi Xian suddenly roared, "Gather!" As soon as he finished speaking, the space in front of him suddenly returned to its original state. Space Dao Law. At this moment, a long spear pierced through the air. Yi Xian unsheathed his sword and slashed. Boom! An explosion resounded. Yi Xian retreated rapidly. Han Ji, who was in front of him, also retreated several feet. After Yi Xian stopped, the executing heaven sword in his hand suddenly flew out. Immeasurable sword. The sword was like a thunderclap. It was extremely fast. In the distance, Han Ji narrowed his eyes and blocked with his spear. Boom! The long spear shook violently and he retreated instantly. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared above his head. Just as Yi Xian was about to attack, Han Ji twisted his wrist and the long spear in his hand suddenly stabbed at Yi Xian's abdomen. His speed was faster than Yi Xian's. Moreover, the spear was longer than the sword. However, in the air, Yi Xian did not retract his sword. Instead, he forcibly moved his body slightly to the right. Chi! Boom! The long spear pierced through Yi Xian's right shoulder while Han Ji retreated over 30 feet away. There was a deep sword mark on his right shoulder. Yi Xian had been hit by his spear, but Han Ji had also taken a sword from Yi Xian, and this sword had almost severed his left hand. Han Ji looked at Yi Xian. He was still not used to Yi Xian's fighting style. Exchanging injury for injury. Exchanging life for life. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already in front of Han Ji. At this moment, Han Ji suddenly brandished his long spear. In an instant, spear after spear of light continuously shattered the space around him. The powerful spear of light directly engulfed Yi Xian. At this moment, within the powerful spear of light, sword after sword appeared continuously. Boom! 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 The surrounding space trembled. After about a quarter of an hour, Yi Xian and Han Ji suddenly disappeared. Lin Xiaoshu's face sank when he saw this. Book Realm. In the Book Realm, Han Ji looked around with a solemn expression. Naturally, he recognized this Book Realm. This Book Realm could suppress one's cultivation level. Once one's cultivation level was suppressed, his chances of winning against Yi Xian would be lower. Moreover, there were word spirits in this Book Realm. Yi Xian looked at Han Ji and without a word, he vanished on the spot. In the next moment, a sword suddenly appeared in front of Han Ji. On the tip of the sword, there was a dot of blood red. The word spirit of the word, destroy. Han Ji's eyes narrowed slightly at the sight of this, and then he suddenly soared into the air. Moreover, in the next moment, the spear in his hand suddenly slashed down. He didn't dodge but chose to meet it head-on. As soon as the sword and spear collided, boom! An earth-shattering explosion suddenly resounded. Then, both of them retreated at the same time and stopped almost at the same time. Han Ji looked at the spear in his hand. The body of the spear had cracked. After a moment of silence, he looked at the sword in Yi Xian's hand. What a good sword! I didn't expect that the treasures of my worldwide academy would recognize you as their master. Moreover, that unruly word spirit is also willing to pledge loyalty to you. You're quite capable. Just at this moment, Yi Xian, who was in the distance, suddenly disappeared. Han Ji reacted extremely quickly and suddenly rushed forward. As he rushed forward, countless spear lights shot out. These spear lights instantly drowned Yi Xian, and within these spear lights, a sword light suddenly tore through. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Within the Book Realm, a series of rumbles sounded continuously. After a moment, a figure suddenly flew out.
It was Yi Xian.
After Yi Xian stopped, a trace of blood slowly flowed out from the corner of his mouth. He looked at the opposite side and saw that Han Ji was holding 2 spears in his hands.
2 spears. Han Ji looked at Yi Xian.
I have to say you. Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. Before he arrived, his sword arrived first.
Light sword.
This sword was extremely fast. However, for an old powerhouse like Han Ji, Yi Xian's sword speed was not fast enough. He blocked with his spear and accurately blocked Yi Xian's sword. At this moment, Yi Xian's light sword suddenly turned into a heavy sword. Yi Xian wielded the heavy sword and swept it horizontally.
Boom!
Han Ji was instantly swept away by Yi Xian's sword.
Yi Xian suddenly took a quick step forward.
At this moment, the heavy sword in his hand had changed into a light sword. This sword did not have the great power of the heavy sword, but it was as fast as lightning.
At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared.
The next moment, a long spear suddenly attacked from the back of Yi Xian's head. Yi Xian dodged sideways and avoided this spear by a hair's breadth. At the same time, he twisted his wrist and slashed his sword horizontally, aiming for Han Ji's abdomen. Han Ji blocked with his spear. However, at this moment, Yi Xian's long sword suddenly turned into a heavy sword.
Rumble!
Han Ji was once again sent flying. The moment he was sent flying, Yi Xian's heavy sword turned into a light sword again. The sword was like a sudden clap of thunder, flashing past. In the distance, Han Ji's pupils suddenly shrank. He raised his spear and stabbed. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly grasped the light sword, and the light sword instantly turned into a heavy sword. The sword arrived.
Rumble!
Han Ji retreated rapidly again. He could not completely withstand the power of Yi Xian's heavy sword. Before Han Ji could stop, Yi Xian once again rushed in front of him. Soon, the two were engaged in a fierce battle. At this moment, Yi Xian actually showed signs of suppressing Han Ji. Of course, this was also because of the book realm. If not for the suppression of the book realm, he would not be able to fight against Han Ji. After all, the other party's realm was much higher than his. Just like this, after about a quarter of an hour, Yi Xian directly suppressed Han Ji.
Sword rule.
As Yi Xian fought with Han Ji, he became more and more proficient in using sword rule. Of course, the most important thing was the executing heaven sword in his hand.
This sword was too sharp.
After losing the advantage of his realm, Han Ji did not dare to face this sword head-on. To Yi Xian, the only flaw was that he lacked a good heavy sword. The heavy sword he was using now was given to him by the sword spirit. It was very ordinary. If this heavy sword was the same as the executing heaven sword, his strength could increase by at least 10 to 20%.
About a quarter of an hour later.
Boom! The surrounding bookshelves in the book realm suddenly shook violently.
Immediately, 2 figures retreated rapidly at the same time.
After Yi Xian stopped, the sword in his hand suddenly flew out. In the distance, Han Ji suddenly clasped his hands together, and this time, he directly caught Yi Xian's sword. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of him, and at the same time, a heavy sword slashed down from above his head. Han Ji's pupils suddenly shrank. He hurriedly let go of the executing heaven sword and dodged backward. At this moment, Yi Xian's heavy sword suddenly turned into the executing heaven sword again. This time, the sword directly pierced into Han Ji's chest. However, it only pierced half an inch, because at some point in time, Han Ji's long spear had also pierced into Yi Xian's chest. This time, Han Ji chose to exchange injury for injury. And at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly rushed forward. He directly let Han Ji's long spear pierce through his chest, and at the same time, his sword also pierced through Han Ji's body.
A life for a life.
Han Ji did not expect Yi Xian to be so ruthless. He looked at Yi Xian and grinned. With our strength, neither of us can kill the other. At this moment, the executing heaven sword in Yi Xian's hand suddenly turned into the soul-suppressing sword. The moment it turned into the soul-suppressing sword, Yi Xian directly retreated more than 10 feet away, while Han Ji's whole body was stunned on the spot.
Soul fixation.
At this moment, Han Ji's soul was directly fixed by the soul-suppressing sword. Han Ji looked at Yi Xian and was about to speak, but suddenly, a sword suddenly flashed past his neck.
Chi!
Han Ji's head directly flew off, and his soul was instantly absorbed by the soul-suppressing sword. He did not even have the chance to resist. And in the distance,
Yi Xian sat on the ground. There was a large hole in his chest. In fact, he was also seriously injured. This battle was not won easily at all. In the battle with Han Ji, he used the book realm, the word spirit, the executing heaven sword, the soul-suppressing sword, and the dragon blood in his body, especially the ancestral blood of the heavenly dragon. If not for the ancestral blood of the heavenly dragon, his physical strength would not have been able to suppress Han Ji. All in all, this time, it was not easy for him to win. It could be said that he gave it his all. At this moment, sitting on the ground, Yi Xian's expression suddenly changed. And at this moment, Lian Qian's voice suddenly sounded in Yi Xian's mind. That woman is here. Run. Run. At this moment, a light laugh suddenly sounded from within the book realm. The next moment, the book realm actually began to collapse inch by inch. Chapter 895. This sudden turn of events caused Yi Xian's expression to change drastically. Someone could forcefully destroy the book realm? He didn't even have the time to think about it when the space here suddenly shattered into pieces. His face instantly turned as pale as a sheet of paper. Very soon, Yi Xian appeared in the Worldwide Academy. Blood continuously flowed from the corner of his mouth. Not far from his right, Xueqi knelt on one knee on the ground. In front of her was also a pool of blood. Yi Xian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He looked in the distance and saw a woman standing there. She was wearing a dark golden dress that dragged on the ground. Flowing lights overflowed from her dress, as if it was the convergence of a galaxy. It was dazzling. Behind her, 2 long sleeves fluttered in the wind. On the sleeves, 2 black phoenixes were embroidered with their heads held high. In the eyes of the phoenixes, there was a domineering aura that looked down on the world. On her feet, she wore a pair of pure black cloth shoes. However, if one looked closely, they would discover that this pair of cloth shoes was actually made of dragon skin. What was worth mentioning was the woman's long hair. The woman's hair reached her waist and her entire body was golden. In front of her forehead, 2 strands of bangs fluttered. The woman's appearance was also peerless. She had an oval face, phoenix eyes, and the slight curve at the corner of her mouth made her look somewhat cynical and unruly. This person was the Worldwide Academy's Zhang Wenxiu. In terms of strength, she was only second to the female teacher of the Worldwide Academy. In the past, this Zhang Wenxiu was much more terrifying than the female teacher. This was because the female teacher was kind and had never made enemies with anyone. The people of the 5th dimension were also smart and would not provoke the female teacher. However, this Zhang Wenxiu was different. She was a crazy witch in the past. If you did not provoke her, she would provoke you. In the 5th dimension, this woman's reputation could be said to be notorious. Even within the Worldwide Academy, no one dared to provoke her. This was because she was really good at fighting. Zhang Wenxiu sized up Yi Xian, then looked at Lin Xiaoshu. Is this the guy who killed Lu Shidi and Han Ji? Lin Xiaoshu nodded. Yes. Zhang Wenxiu suddenly threw a slap at Lin Xiaoshu. Lin Xiaoshu's expression changed as he raised the Book of Holy Words to block the slap. Boom. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Lin Xiaoshu and the Book of Holy Prophecy were sent flying. Not only that, but the Book of Holy Prophecy also split open. Everyone. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched when he saw this. This woman is extraordinarily strong. At this time, Zhang Wenxiu glanced at the Worldwide Academy powerhouses and made a shameful face. How embarrassing. You guys are such a disgrace. As she spoke, she suddenly pointed at Lin Xiaoshu. Especially you, you're practically a piece of trash. How can you still have the face to live? If I were you, I'd just find a piece of paper and kill myself. And that Lu Shidi and Tianji, they're both super big pieces of trash. They've cultivated for so many years, yet they were killed by a kid who hasn't even grown his hair yet. It's good that they're dead. It's so fucking good that they're dead. Everyone. Yi Xian had a strange expression on his face. Is there something wrong with this woman? At this moment, Zhang Wenxiu suddenly looked at Yi Xian and sized up Yi Xian. You're quite capable. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, be reasonable. It was your Worldwide Academy who came looking for trouble with me first. Be reasonable? Zhang Wenxiu sneered. What the hell is that? Yi Xian. At this moment, Lian Qian's voice suddenly rang out in Yi Xian's mind. Run. Just as Yi Xian was about to speak,
Zhang Wenxiu suddenly grabbed with her right hand and a powerful force enveloped Yi Xian. Come out! As soon as she finished speaking, she lifted her right hand and directly pulled Lian Qian out of the world prison pagoda. At this moment, Yi Xian's expression became extremely solemn. This woman's strength was even more terrifying than Chen Yiming's. Yo, tisese. Zhang Wenxiu sized up Lian Qian. I was wondering who it was. So it's Lian Qian. So you're not dead yet? Lian Qian looked at Zhang Wenxiu and did not speak. Zhang Wenxiu looked around. Where's your big sister? Don't tell me she's dead. If that's the case, I'll be very sad. You know that if I can't kill her with my own hands, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. Lian Qian's face was expressionless. If you're so powerful, why don't you go and fight with the headmaster? Zhang Wenxiu suddenly slapped Lian Qian. Lian Qian narrowed her eyes and put her hands together. A seal suddenly appeared in front of her, but the seal instantly shattered. Boom! Lian Qian instantly retreated. When she stopped, a trickle of blood slowly flowed from the corner of her mouth. Zhang Wenxiu looked at Lian Qian expressionlessly. We haven't seen each other for so many years, but your eloquence is getting better. Yi Xian suddenly said, I think her eloquence is still not as good as yours. Zhang Wenxiu looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled. I've heard a lot about the Worldwide Academy. I have to say that I'm quite impressed by the former prophet and some of the people from the Worldwide Academy. However, after interacting with you guys for so long, I've realized that you guys are really a pile of dog *T. As he said that, he pointed at Zhang Wenxiu angrily. You can't stand others doing well. That Xiao Ta recognized me as his master. This is Xiao Ta's own choice. Why can't the academy let him? Also, when you beat up the young, the old comes. Why? Does the Worldwide Academy only know how to bully the young? Zhang Wenxiu sneered. Don't talk to me about this nonsense. Of course, as you said, the academy is indeed a pile of dog *T. Yi Xian was speechless. Zhang Wenxiu continued. Actually, I've been annoyed by this academy for a long time. Unfortunately, it was created by teacher. No matter how much I dislike it, I can't destroy it with my own hands. I won't let others destroy it either. As for bullying the young, I feel that since I'm stronger than you, why can't I bully the young? If you're so capable, you should become stronger too. The corner of Yi Xian's mouth twitched. This woman was not playing by the rules. Zhang Wenxiu looked at Lian Qian. Lian Qian, no matter what, you were created by teacher. I can't believe you helped an outsider destroy the academy. I didn't know that you had such a rebellious bone in you. Lian Qian was expressionless. Zhang Wenxiu, he's not an outsider. He's master's inheritor. Zhang Wenxiu suddenly said angrily, Bull *T. How many years is teacher different from him? Inheritor? Do you think I'm a pig? Lian Qian said in a low voice. Xiao Ta has recognized him as his master. Zhang Wenxiu was expressionless. Is Xiao Ta master? Xiao Ta is just a piece of trash created by teacher. Can he represent teacher? At this moment, the prison pagoda in Yi Xian's body suddenly trembled. Yi Xian was speechless. Zhang Wenxiu looked at Lian Qian coldly. Even if he's teacher's inheritor, so what? Am I not teacher's inheritor? Also, have you forgotten what teacher said in the past? Those who harm each other will be punished by the heavens and earth. This kid killed Lu Shidi. If he's teacher's inheritor, then he's a taboo in our sect. Lian Qian was about to speak when Zhang Wenxiu suddenly waved his hand. Why am I wasting my time talking nonsense with you? Really, it's a waste of time. I'll deal with you guys first. Then I'll go and destroy Fu Wenzong. How dare any Tom, Dick, or Harry bully my academy? As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly clenched her right hand towards Yi Xian from afar. In an instant, the space around Yi Xian started to warp. Yi Xian was horrified, and he suddenly roared furiously, Break! As soon as he spoke, the space Dao Law suddenly appeared between his brows, and it didn't take long for the space before him to start shattering. However, his face instantly turned pale. In the distance, Zhang Wenxiu laughed coldly. Space Dao Law. As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly waved her right hand. With just a light wave, the space before Yi Xian started to shatter layer by layer,
and Yi Xian retreated explosively. When Xueqi saw this, she transformed into a ray of sword light that slashed towards Zhang Wenxiu. It was a very powerful attack. However, Zhang Wenxiu's eyes were filled with disdain, and she stomped her right foot lightly. Bang! The ray of sword light shattered, and Xueqi was blasted flying. She couldn't fight back at all. The gap between them was too huge. After Yi Xian stopped moving, he glanced at his body. At this moment, his body was actually covered in cracks. Moreover, his space Dao Law had suffered a heavy injury just now as well. This was the first time his space Dao Law had been injured. This woman was even more terrifying than Chen Yiming. Meanwhile, Xueqi walked over to Yi Xian's side, and she gazed at Zhang Wenxiu in the distance as she spoke in a low voice. This woman is very strong. Yi Xian nodded. She outsmarted her opponent. Xueqi gazed at Yi Xian. Let's watch your performance. Yi Xian nodded slightly, and then he gazed at Zhang Wenxiu. Miss Wenxiu, I want to say a few words before you kill me. Before Zhang Wenxiu could speak, Lin Xiaoshu suddenly said, Don't let him speak. Zhang Wenxiu looked at Lin Xiaoshu, and Lin Xiaoshu said solemnly, This person has a glib tongue, and he is good at tricks. It is better to kill him directly. Zhang Wenxiu looked at Lin Xiaoshu. You don't want him to speak, but I want him to. Lin Xiaoshu's face twitched. Was there something wrong with this woman? Although he thought so, he didn't dare to say it out loud. He knew that apart from his former teacher, she wouldn't give face to anyone else. Zhang Wenxiu looked at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian quickly said, Miss Wenxiu, you can't be considered an expert if you kill me. If you have the ability, then kill the people behind me. Do you dare? Zhang Wenxiu smiled. Are you trying to provoke me? Yi Xian said, That's right. It's a provocation. Miss Wenxiu, do you dare to follow me to kill the people behind me? Zhang Wenxiu laughed out loud. You don't say, I want to meet the people behind you. After all, we have to do things in one go. Lead the way. Yi Xian looked at Zhang Wenxiu and then at Lian Qian and Seven. Enter the tower. Seven didn't hesitate and entered the prison tower. Lian Qian hesitated and then said, Who are you going to find? Yi Xian said, Let's enter the tower. Lian Qian looked at Yi Xian and didn't say anything else. She entered the prison tower. Yi Xian looked at Zhang Wenxiu. Let's go. After saying that, he turned around and left. In the distance, Lin Xiaoshu wanted to say something, but Zhang Wenxiu suddenly said, Shut up. You retard, stop wasting air. After saying that, she followed Yi Xian. Lin Xiaoshu. P.S. Do you dare to vote for me?